Listen, Mark, I don't like scandals. I think the only thing that has been is
Hey, Stanley doesn't state the obvious, like what he's talking points. Yes, he does.
The nature of American culture, it's a white people problem. I literally said they need to understand.
Like this. If they want to be with you, it's called Stanley versus the world.
You just assume their character by stereotype?
I think people do that every day.
Okay, I didn't ask you.
What do I do? Okay.
I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Well, Donald Trump's been making headlines again for all the wrong reasons, or perhaps the right reasons. First of all, let's go ahead and get the most obvious point out of the way. What is Trump attempting to do with this latest little stunt of outrage? Well, first of all, with the Epstein files' latest tranche having been made public, and people actually seeing who's who and what's what, Donald Trump would love to see the headlines change. He'd love to change the subject even if he has to force it, and that's what he does best. With the disclosure of more of the Epstein files, what's happening is people are actually seeing who the hell has been hobnobbing with the most degenerate elements, not just in American society, but around the world. They're pulling back the curtain and getting a real look at who's been dishing the dirt. To wit, Pizzagate may not have been real, but it is real that there's been a lot of rich and powerful people who have been engaged in exactly that kind of activity, just like the public thought. And the public anger about all this isn't going away, but it's not finding an outlet either. The people are angry, but there's nowhere for them to vent. They're not actually seeing that anger translate into action against any of these reprobates. And the sad truth is, it's not going to, certainly not easily, because of course the people who are responsible for prosecuting the criminals were chosen by the criminals. If there's supposed to be some sort of war on crime, well, how do you make sure that you guarantee yourself to win the war? By funding both sides. Trump didn't expect his own base to keep pushing for the Epstein files to be released. He thought that if he kept throwing these guys red meat, their bellies would be full, and at some point they would move on to something else. The real threat, however, is not just to have pedophiles and degenerates exposed. It's also the destruction of the legitimacy that the system had by delegitimizing its administrators. That's the real threat here. Wouldn't it be the greatest of ironies if the biggest liar in America just so happened to be telling the truth when he says, I didn't really have any dealings with that guy like that? Yeah, but everybody who Trump would depend on, people in his orbit, the people that he made promises to, they all were mobbed up with Epstein. Maybe Trump's hands aren't dirty, but everybody else's certainly are. They all pretended to be ideological opponents, but in reality, it was just political theater. And why were these people who portrayed themselves as being so entrenched and intractable in their own beliefs also so happy and willing to hobnob with a man that they all knew ran a pedophile ring? It's because their mutual depravity was the only thing that mattered. This is the true and only ideology of white supremacy. Power and the ability to abuse it with impunity. That's it. That's the only thing that these people actually believe in. And what makes somebody valuable to these kind of individuals is whether or not they're willing to go all out to protect them. That's the devil's bargain that Barack Obama made. When Barack Obama was running for president back in 2008, this country was on the verge of a revolution because of the economic meltdown. And what was it that the first biracial president's job actually was? To dissipate all of that revolutionary energy. Think about it. Barack Obama got more money from these big donors than George W. Bush got in either of his elections. Think about that. W gave the rich all of these tax breaks, tax cuts, more than any president in history. He was hell-bound and determined that he was going to slant the entire national economy strictly in the favor of the rich. He did more for them than any president ever had, and yet those same people gave more money to Barack Obama when he was running, the guy from the opposite party. What does that tell you? What on earth did Barack Obama promise these men that could have possibly been more valuable than what W had already done? And then you look at the fact that none of them went to prison. You look at the fact that these guys got to have the National Treasury bootstrap all of their incompetence. And they got to keep all of their bonuses. They didn't have to lose anything. In fact, they gained from it, courtesy of the nation's first biracial president. They used America's cardinal sin of anti-FBA racism as a smokescreen to be able to put this biracial puppet into the White House. And when he got in there, he did exactly as he was told. White supremacy has always used race as a glittering distraction in order to get people to look the other way so that it can carry out its dirt. And what Donald Trump has done with this latest racial outrage is another example of that. I'm not saying that Donald Trump didn't mean to make this racist remark. Obviously, this is the orange man being his typical racist self. But what I am saying is he understood exactly what the impact of it would be. He's using it as a distraction, clearly from the Epstein files. And if he's willing to put this self-inflicted wound upon himself, one has to wonder, what is it that he's really trying to prevent people from looking at? What is it that he really doesn't want the public to focus on and to see? Or rather, who is it that he's trying to protect? And by the way, just for the record, I find it amusing that the white right likes to do their little slick shots of the black community and talking about how they love this kind of memes and, oh, we love this stuff because this is telling the truth about the black community, etc., etc. These clowns need to figure out that comparing any black person to a primate is ridiculous for a white supremacist to do it. And it shows that they don't care about the facts, only about whether it fits their perverted ideology. As long as you give these clowns their temporary sugar rush of anti-black hysteria and hatred, they're good for the rest of the hour. I mean, this is the reason why meth is so popular. It's the closest thing to anti-black racism that they can have in a chemical form. But if these white supremacists want to see who truly resembles a primate, all they have to do is look in the mirror. It was white scientists who established that black people don't have Neanderthal DNA, but the white supremacists do. And that's why we prefer the sun. I've long felt that we should have a month dedicated to our history, and like every black person, I recognize that when white people chose February as so-called Black History Month, they did it as a backhanded compliment. It was them choosing the shortest and coldest month of the year. It was an open insult, and that's just normal for the dominant society. If we are to have a month set aside to recognize our history, contributions, and accomplishments, then it ought to be a month like, say, March or April. Why? Because March is the actual start of the new year. It's the start of spring. Now, April would probably be preferable by many of you because it's a warmer month, but regardless, we could all agree that February is the wrong month for Black history for a variety of reasons. But why is it that the white supremacists in particular, they love that kind of thing? Hell, when you look at it, why is it that the coldest months of the year are sacred to these guys? It's because the white supremacist is not natural. Jeffrey Epstein was an excellent example of that fact. But why do these white supremacists, they're heathens, they're cultists, love to go against nature? They don't follow the natural human rhythms of the earth. They instead rebel against them. Instead of doing what humans have done and get up at dawn, they instead demand that the day begin in the middle of the night. And the same with the yearly calendar. Why, for the European, did the year begin in the middle of the dead winter? Shouldn't the new year begin when the earth is coming back to life again in the spring? It used to in every culture around the world, until white supremacy forced the planet to dance to its tune and to become part of the pale hand of death's suicide cult. See, the reason the white supremacists forced midnight onto us as the beginning of the day and forced winter onto us as the beginning of the year is because the druids and the other heathens would go out in the middle of the night into the woods for their little occult worshiping. They knew what they were doing was wrong and weird, so they went out in the middle of the night to do it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, but what happens when the filth only come out at night? The reason that this comes naturally to the white supremacists like Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump is because of the Neanderthal genes. Humans go to sleep at night. Animals, on the other hand, get up to go hunt at night. That's their favorite time to do it. It's a time for them to look for soft targets to attack, to carry out ambushes, to find ways to crawl into places that they normally wouldn't be able to get into. Rodents and vermin typically sneak into people's homes during the night. You see, for them, sundown is the beginning of their day, and daybreak is the time that they want to avoid. There's a reason why the dominant society is so obsessed with vampires and romanticizes them. They look at vampires and see themselves. So for these white supremacists out there, no matter how you choose to slice it, whether it be in physical appearance or inward nature, Black people have nothing in common with apes, orangutans, or any other sorts of primates. But can the orange man say the same? Of course not. Now, this latest stunt by Donald Trump has gotten a lot of attention by the left corner of the white media, and the outrage that many of them have been showing is genuine, just not for the reasons they say. Sure, calling out Trump's latest act of racism is an easy layup because it's true, but it's not a surprise. What's missing from the left's outrage is what they're going to do about it. Notice how not one of the talking heads or any of these political bloviators have said a word about that. What's the reaction to this going to be? Their entire response is, well, the reaction is, you need to turn out to vote. This is why we can't have him in the White House. You need to vote. Fine, but Donald Trump's not up for re-election. The reality happens to be, even if the orange man were to resign from office tomorrow, there would be J.D. Vance or some other scumbag who's just as bad as him, if not worse. So the only thing the white left is recommending is playing a game of musical chairs with these racists. That's not a sensible conversation at all, because it's not a conversation. It's a distraction. When it comes time to talk about white people getting killed in the course of protecting illegal aliens, or even when it's illegal aliens themselves who are getting rounded up, when it comes time to talk about any other group's issues other than foundational Black Americans, suddenly the same white left that didn't have any ideas, now they're just brimming with policy proposals. Now they don't just do half a thought, they actually follow through on it. They tell you what a problem is, and then they say, now here's what needs to be done. Suddenly they're putting forward ideas about things they want to do. They're not just tisk-tisking and saying, oh, isn't that a shame? A few Asians got into fights back in 2020. Democrats passed an anti-Asian hate crime law. A few Asian businesses lost some of their foot traffic during the pandemic. They hurried to pass laws to make it possible for them to get economic help. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Democrats responded by going to the states and passing statewide referendums. When Clarence Thomas merely hinted that the Supreme Court should revisit its gay marriage ruling, they pushed a gay marriage law through Congress, and they did it during an election year. Illegals are getting rounded up. They push for a temporary protection program. White people get killed protecting illegals. They're demanding that ICE be abolished and that the Trump administration has to fire or remove or even prosecute anyone who was involved. Kristi Noem and other spokespeople for Trump said that the white folks who got killed in Minneapolis were terrorists. You got the left saying these guys all have to be forced to resign, probably should be prosecuted. But what they're not doing is they're not merely saying, oh, well, Trump and his people, they were just wrong for that. Anytime you see these people saying that they care about some act of anti-Black racism, but you don't see them pushing policy to punish it and to punish those responsible, then they're just running game on you. Donald Trump's racism is disgusting, but it's not new, and neither is the Democrats' inaction to it either. Trump's not the only racist looking for a distraction that he can use as a way out of his immediate political problem. The Democrats are also doing the same. They know that their so-called much ballyhooed blue wave for November is starting to look more like a blue ripple. That being the case, they need to augment those numbers. They need to boost the numbers for potential voter turnout. And who the hell else can they go to? Well, it turns out that all of these other groups that they thought were going to replace the Black vote, all of these other constituencies that they've been desperately trying to cultivate, well, they're just not getting on board, not to the game-changing proportions that Democrats need. So as usual, they've been forced to go back to the old standby, to the true swing vote, the only swing vote, that FBA constituency. That's what they've been forced to have to go back to, the base of the Democratic Party. But as usual, they're determined to get that vote without doing or even promising anything to us. They want us to look at disrespect towards Barack Obama as being a personal affront against us. Well, they chose the wrong foil for that ploy. It's like I've been saying for years. These people keep trying to push one of two buttons in the Black political psyche, the fear button or the anger button. When Black people stayed home in 2016, that was because of anger. When Black people turned out to vote in 2020, that was because of fear. Because after all, Donald Trump was too dangerous to be allowed to have a second term. We can be disgusted by Trump's racism, but we're not surprised. And if these people who are so outraged aren't talking about what they intend to see done, not just to Trump, but also to the people who promote this kind of anti-Black racism, then they're liars when they claim that they're outraged. All it took was for people to merely criticize Israel committing a genocide, and you got Democrats and Republicans who began pushing laws and policies to punish campus protesters. They forced the sale of TikTok because it was the only social media platform that allowed people to post the gory videos of what the IDF and the Israeli government were doing against the Palestinians. That's what that forced sale was truly about. And sure, Trump's taken the lead on targeting foreign student activists for deportation, but he's just continuing the policies that Biden started. Biden was the one who set the table for all of that. And now we got talk about an anti-Semitism czar, which reminds me of Letitia James setting up a hotline and a task force when the Stop Asian Hate hashtag was trending. When any other group is saying that somebody's done something that offends them, When it comes to these people on the white left, especially the Democrats, they respond with actions. They respond with policies. They don't respond with excuses and lies and claim, oh, well, I mean, we tried, but we just couldn't get it done. Look what's gone on with Trump going after TPS. You got federal judges passing all kinds of orders saying, oh, you can't do that. In fact, you can't do anything. Yeah, these courts and these judges who never seem able to enforce the law on behalf of foundational Black Americans, who never saw a law targeting us that they thought was unconstitutional, who never have a problem rubber stamping all of the asinine strategies of people like Ed Blum and other trash. These same judges, as soon as you got any other group whose rights are being threatened, or in the case of illegal aliens whose unconstitutional privileges are being threatened, all of a sudden these guys can't wait to say, oh, you can't do that. Now all of a sudden these guys do this across the board. What does that tell you? That tells you that this is an organized offense. These are not accidents. There is a clear, unwritten, but fiercely enforced policy that where foundational Black Americans are concerned, we are to be completely and thoroughly ignored, if not just attacked outright. If you're not attacking us, then at the very least, you're supposed to ignore us. And we know this.
Well, welcome to Stanley versus the world. Looks like it's just me and you, Deacon Dave. Everyone, as you come in, make sure you hit the like button and share this out. Share the show out. Our little mess of a show. Actually, well, I don't know. I'll talk about it later. These shorts that I've been releasing have actually been getting results, which is kind of surprising. Guess I should have been doing this the whole time. So we as far as this is actually maybe the second video I've heard by Professor Black Truth in the past couple months. He hasn't really been doing anything that, you know, I felt worth showing. However, I think he hit a home run with this video. He's absolutely right. I think that both parties, excuse me, as I've said plenty enough times in the past, the Republicans are at least openly racist from the president on down. Democrats are passive racists. They will act when you know, they don't have Black interests in mind. And the thing is, it could be that you know, the Black America is a little bit fragmented and not necessarily on the same page as to what's important. I wonder if that has something to do with it. And I spent more time than I should have listening to Sharon's show today. And it was the typical just it was really just the typical mess. It just, you know, a bunch of people getting up there and you know, they sound right, they sound passionate, except when you sit down and you start actually applying critical thought to some of it. And my favorite was that the Black community needs to just do vigilante justice. You know, like if you know that some woman is going through domestic violence or some child is being abused, we ought to just bust the door down and as a community go in there and take care of business. And probably the only thing I typed in Sharon's chat was there are too many stupid people to actually endorse something like vigilante violence. Stupid people get shit wrong constantly. And, you know, if you want to have a bunch of incidents like Minneapolis, allow people to do vigilante justice. You know, that's essentially what ICE has been doing. So that was, you know, that's kind of like indicative of the quality of conversation that I heard. People promoting vigilante violence and making these wild analogies and standing 10 toes down on these wild analogies. They were comparing Bad Bunny to Corey Holcomb, and it was just a mess over there. So it was entertaining for sure. And then our buddy Nightish, I'm like, dude, what is wrong? All of a sudden, Nightish is like just making these wild comparisons and getting so emotional that I'm like, dude, calm down. What is wrong? Take a deep breath. So but I won't be showing any of Sharon's show. I thought about showing a couple clips, but I'm not gonna. Me seeing it once was enough. So let's get on to some news stories here. It looks like they have video of a possible suspect or something in the Nancy Guthrie case, which I guess I'll play this and then I'll go back up to the underline the. Let's see what we got here. Oh wait, this isn't what I want. Hold on one sec. Fox News is I hate showing Fox News clips. These guys are just low quality. Let's see if I can get out of this. There we go. Well, let's just go with the main story here. Appeals court backs Noam to end TPS protections for Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Court says the government is likely to prevail in its defense of ending TPS protections. So a federal appeals court in San Francisco granted a stay, allowing the government to proceed with terminating TPS for immigrants from Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua. The reliably liberal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued an order freezing a lower court ruling that would have vacated Department of Homeland Security, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's decision to end these protections. The court found the government was likely to succeed on the grounds that the DHS decision was not arbitrary or capricious, suggesting that the decision-making process was rational. The government is likely to prevail in its argument that the Secretary's decision-making process in terminating TPS for Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal was not arbitrary and capricious, the document said. Last year, Noem sought to terminate refugee status for the three long-protected countries, arguing that under TPS, the government must check if the initial reasons for their protection still apply. There were specific environmental disasters. Nepal was designated in 2015 following a massive earthquake, while Honduras and Nicaragua received protections in 1999 after Hurricane Mitch. Well, you know what? She might have a point there. So the interesting thing is going to be the kids, between 2015 to now and 1999 to now, how the kids who were born in the United States, or maybe kids born under temporary protected status, aren't covered under the 14th Amendment. That would be an interesting thing. Too bad Juan's not here. I would definitely ask him. Hopefully I'll remember the next time he wanders in here. Let's see here. I was talking about Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy Guthrie. in the home security camera system, they were able to isolate a guy who was armed, but that was pretty much the only new thing that's come about. And then there was a second ransom deadline that passed. And then the other interesting thing is that the ransom is for Bitcoin, um, which is interesting. All right, let's see here. Apparently, Christy Noam and the head of is it ICE? Yeah, acting director of ICE were basically before a House commission. I don't know which, or House committee. Which one? Homeland Security Committee. And Todd Lyons, who is the acting director of ICE, and Rodney Scott, the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, repeatedly refused to answer questions about the fatal shootings of 2 U.S. citizens last month. Yeah, they're basically nothing's going to come of those deaths. They're hoping time will move on to the next emergency du jour. These agents are going to be able to get away with it scot-free. Let's see here. Trump administration to cut $600 million in health funding from 4 states. The states, all led by Democrats, surprise, surprise, used the grants to support a wide variety of functions, including HIV prevention and surveillance. So Trump is basically wanting to divide the country in half and basically I guess he's trying to he's either trying to force Democratic states into submission or he's trying to start a civil war. I can't think of any other reason a president of the United States would be so divisive. Oh, did you really? Where'd you see him, Sin? He must have been on CT's show. I think that's where he hangs out a lot. Now that Be Brave is gone, I guess. Thanks for mentioning us to him. Maybe he will wander in. He's actually a pretty good panelist. So let's play this.
Trump administration to cut $600 million in health funding from 4 states. This article is by Apurva Mandavilli and read by an automated voice. The Trump administration plans to rescind $600 million in public health funds from 4 states led by Democrats because it finds the grants inconsistent with agency priorities, according to documents reviewed by the New York Times. The programs slated to be cut are in California, Colorado, Illinois, and Minnesota. They include grants to state and local public health departments, as well as to some non-governmental organizations. A list of the cuts was shared with relevant congressional committees on Monday. The funds are administered through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They include grants given to states for a variety of purposes, including hiring staffs, modernizing data systems, and managing disease outbreaks. Some programs are aimed at the needs of specific communities. Some of the cuts will be finalized this week, and others over the coming weeks, totaling roughly $600 million. The figure was first reported by the New York Post. Nearly 2/3 of the funding is unspent money allocated to state and local public health departments in California. These grants are being terminated because they do not reflect agency priorities. A spokesman for the Department of Health and Human Services said about 24 of the grants were aimed at curbing HIV and other sexually transmitted infections. Dr. Deb Horry, who served as the CDC's chief medical officer before she resigned in August, noted that Congress had already appropriated the funds. It is concerning that HHS is cutting public health funding to local communities that cover core functions in the middle of a measles.
Yep, that is the key. This is exactly why um, Congress needs to be swung to Democratic control. Once what Donald Trump is doing is unconstitutional. Okay, the executive branch's role is to execute the laws that Congress passes, and appropriating money is a law. It's within a law. And the president should not be able to just decide on his own that, oh, hey, Congress is wrong. We're not spending that money. And if he decides he wants to do that, then he needs to account for where the money winds up going. That ought to be a big splashy public headline. But he shouldn't be doing it in the first place. And this is actually, where I was going last night. What Trump is doing is essentially not America first, and it is not it's un-American. If you can't follow the democratic norms that have been functioning for 250 years, that is, then you're un-American. And all these yahoos, I saw Cellulite had a show titled this morning, Donald Trump is the best president, people need to deal with it. I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? Of course, you know what? It shouldn't surprise me that people like that would think so. They're not. They tend not to be the brightest bulbs on their Christmas tree. All right, in another astounding case of presidential overreach, Trump threatens to block opening of new bridge between U.S. and Canada. Now, the interesting thing, well, let me read this. President Donald Trump on Monday threatened to block the opening of a new bridge between the United States and Canada until he said Canada compensates and respects the U.S. I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them. And also importantly, Canada treats the United States with the fairness and respect that we deserve. Trump said in a social media post. The president did not mention the bridge by name, but appears to be referring to the Gordie Howe International Bridge. The 6-lane project is set to connect Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. Trump said that he plans to start negotiations immediately, in all caps, seeming to refer to a deal on the bridge. The $4.7 billion bridge has been under construction since 2018. It is expected to open early this year with major construction complete. Though an opening date has not been announced, its construction is being financed and overseen by the Canadian government. Trump on Monday also repeated his ongoing criticism of Canada since he began a trade war with America's northern neighbor. With all that we have given them, we should own perhaps at least one half of this asset. The revenues generated because of the U.S. market will be astronomical, Trump said in the post. So Canada built the bridge. They funded the bridge. So Trump literally wants to force Canada into a deal. Isn't the deal that the United States didn't pay for the bridge? We got a free bridge. What more do you want? And by the way, Trump's not going to be able to do shit about this. He doesn't have the authority to be closing bridges. Okay, let's see. What other damage has Trump done today? Trump administration to repeal EPA greenhouse gas endangerment finding used to regulate emissions. The Trump administration plans to repeal the EPA's greenhouse gas endangerment finding. a key scientific determination made during the Obama era. The finding underpins federal authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions by linking them to risks to human health. Well, why would Donald Trump care about human health? Come on now. Repealing it would remove the legal foundation for broad U.S. climate regulations and mark the administration's most sweeping climate policy rollback. Oh, boy. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Yeah, I'm a little worried about our buddy, to be honest. He doesn't seem his usual kind of happy-go-lucky self. So, hope everything's okay. But he was a little histrionic. I thought he was gonna break out crying over Corey Holcomb in those disgusting things that Corey Holcomb was saying. But it was just so hyperbolic. Just I don't know what to say. Trump gets every show dedicated to him for at least the next 3 years. Well, Dave, he's in the headlines every day. What do you want me to do? Ignore? This is supposed to be nominally a show dedicated to news and current events and politics. How am I going to ignore a man that's in the headlines every day who happens to be president of the United States? What would you have me talk about, Dave? Suggestions, any show topic suggestions, or things that I should orient the show towards? Would you have me orient the show towards the Obama administration or the Biden administration? We do history here. Maybe I should be looking at the Obama administration, going back and reliving the highlights. The man's in the headlines every day, Dave. All right, well, let's move on here. Judge blocks enforcement of California's law banning masks for ICE agents. So California tried, and I think the upshot is they have to wear their badges prominently. So I guess so you can take a badge number or something. How are you possibly going to be able to take down a badge number while you're getting your ass beat by an ICE agent? So I don't know. I also heard that they were toying with the idea of issuing barcodes, I guess, to be worn on vests, or barcodes prominently, which I guess that's something. Let's see. So California fails. ICE is going to be able to wear masks. And this is what I was talking about. Blocks California's ban on feds wearing masks, but requires badges to be clearly seen. I don't know. After you get your ass beat, officer, can I get your badge number? U.S. says 2 people killed in military strike on boat in Pacific. Officials say rescuers searching for lone survivor after latest attack on what Pentagon says are suspected drug dealers. Dude, suspected? Man, so if you think a boat is carrying drugs, you just blow them out of the water? Damn. U.S. Military Southern Command, which oversee operations in Latin America and the Caribbean, announced that it carried out another deadly strike on Monday, killing 2 suspected drug smugglers in the Eastern Pacific. The statement said that the latest in what legal experts have called a series of extrajudicial killings by the Pentagon was carried out at the direction of the Florida-based combat unit's new commander, General Francis L. Donovan, who was sworn in at a Pentagon ceremony last Thursday. So he's getting his feet wet, uh, figuratively early, huh? Donovan takes over after a U.S. Navy Admiral, Alvin Halsey, chose to retire over reported disagreements over the boat strike policy. The announcement, which was accompanied by video of the attack, was carried out on a boat transiting along known narco trafficking routes in the Eastern Pacific, the Pentagon said. The U.S. Coast Guard was called to search for a lone survivor of the attack. Ah, boy. And the last news article, Susan Collins runs for re-election in one of 2026's top Senate fights. The Maine Republican is one of her party's most vulnerable senators, and her seat is crucial to Democratic hopes of retaking control of the chamber. Yeah, Susan Collins, oddly enough, is not well liked by either side, to be honest. With your camera? All right. Well, we are going to listen to the lovely Dr. Stacy Patton in her beautiful voice talking about the Black National Anthem is breaking MAGA's brain, and here's why. You know, funny enough, on T's show, I think it was last night, they showed a clip of the lady who sang the Black National Anthem before the Super Bowl. And there was someone who I consider the most interesting woman in the world, who I think it was that woman who didn't know what the Black National Anthem was. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was someone else. But I don't think it's breaking MAGA's brain. It's breaking. No, you know what? It wasn't you, Sin. It was Reese. I think it was Reese who had no idea what the Black National Anthem was. And I mean, it's not something that was necessarily taught in school, because I went first through sixth grade to a all Black Catholic school. So, you know, I kind of grew up with it. Plus my mother, you know, was into that sort of thing. But it's not just breaking MAGA's brain. It's breaking a lot of various brains.
Good morning. I'm recording from campus, so please excuse any background noise you might hear for today's reading. There's something almost soothing about knowing with absolute certainty how this country will react to Black truth in public. If you want proof that America is emotionally predictable, February will prove it every single time. You could set your watch by it. Black History Month appears, and suddenly a large segment of white America discovers a deep concern about racial unity. Since Sunday, the MAGA outrage machine is fuming because Coco Jones sang Lift Every Voice and Sing on the same football field where America sells trucks, beers, surveillance tech, and nostalgia for a country that never actually existed. Every year, the outrage over this song is framed like a spontaneous cultural eruption, but it is actually predictable and incentivized. And this is why I love teaching media literacy, because it helps us see patterns instead of reacting to the noise. And right now, in an algorithm-driven culture where outrage is monetized, pattern recognition is political power. The MAGA machine framed the Black hymn being sung as divisive, recycled the one anthem talking point, and turned it into culture war content. That reaction fits a pattern that has repeated every single year since the NFL formalized including the song in Super Bowl program in the early 2020s. They got mad when Alicia Keys, Cheryl Lee Ralph, Andra Day, and Lettucey sang the hymn. What matters is not that the rage happened again. What matters is why it keeps happening and why it reliably generates outrage cycles that feel spontaneous but are actually so structurally predictable. The annual meltdown isn't really about the song, it's about narrative ownership. Lift Every Voice and Sing is dangerous to certain political imaginations because it exists as historical evidence that Black Americans have always had a different relationship to the nation that has been defined by exclusion, resistance, and survival inside a country that demanded our loyalty while denying us full citizenship. The song is not separatist, it's testimonial. But testimonial history makes myth based patriotism feel itchy as hell. This year's outrage is showing up in a moment where culture war politics are more totalizing than they were even 5 years ago. The ecosystem is more algorithmically sorted, the incentives to escalate rhetoric are higher, and the political backdrop of authoritarian flirtation, open hostility to DEI frameworks, and aggressive historical revisionism means these symbolic moments hit harder. So, what used to be framed as why do we need this is now more often framed as this proves something is being taken from white people. You also need to consider that the Super Bowl itself is one of the last mass shared civic stages in American culture where tens of millions of people across ideology, race, class, and region are watching the same thing at the same time. Whoever controls symbolism in that space gets to help narrate what America is. So every pregame performance becomes bigger than itself. The field becomes a storytelling site. And for people who believe America is fundamentally a white civilizational project, a Black historical hymn on that field reads like encroachment instead of inclusion. Then layer in the modern outrage economy. Anger is profitable. It drives engagement, fundraising, and political identity formation. So even if the number of people truly furious is relatively small, amplification makes it feel massive. Outrage becomes content and identity glue, which is political capital. Rinse, repeat, next February, same script. Another thing that's quietly operating under all of this is historical illiteracy. Most Americans were never taught what Lift Every Voice and Sing actually is. It's not a replacement or separatist anthem. It is a hymn born from Reconstruction era Black survival and aspiration. It sits alongside American history, not outside it. But when historical literacy is low, symbolic literacy is even lower because so many people are not media literate. They can't even decode what they're seeing and hearing, so they default to threat interpretation and get pissed, even if they can't articulate why. Large segments of the public experience cultural moments only through algorithm filtered commentary. They don't watch the performance. They only watch reactions to reactions to reactions. By the time the discourse reaches them, it's already framed as conflict. So they never encounter the song as music or history. They encounter it as controversy. But we need to ask, why this anthem? Why this emotional story as the national default? Most people have never read the full lyrics of the Star Spangled Banner. They experienced it as sound, ritual, jets, stadiums, and muscle memory. We've got to interrupt that autopilot and say, no, y'all, let's read the damn words. Look at the historical moment it came from. That's historical literacy work, and historical literacy is dangerous to myth-based nationalism. So let's go ahead and read some of the lyrics. It opens not with unity, not with shared civic belonging, but with surveillance and battle anxiety. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? That's a battlefield question. It's literally asking, did we survive the night of bombardment? Then it escalates immediately into spectacle violence and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. The emotional anchor is not people, it's not freedom, it's not collective safety. It's a flag surviving explosions. The nation is symbolized not by human flourishing, but by a banner remaining intact during warfare. And then you get to the verses most Americans have never been taught. The third verse reads, and where is that band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. That line, no refuge could save the hireling and slave, sits inside a historical moment when enslaved Black people who escaped to British forces were treated as enemies. The emotional posture here is not reconciliation, it is triumph over those who sought liberation outside American control. And then the final verse closes with conquest and divine nationalism fully fused. Oh, thus be it ever when freemen shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause is just. And this be our motto, and God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall we wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Then conquer we must, not reflect, not repair, conquer. Now put that anthem next to Lift Every Voice and Sing, which opens with Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Not bombs, not survival through violence, voices, harmony, liberty as something shared, not defended through explosions and death. Then stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. That is historical testimony. And then, yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed? This is generational survival language. And the theology is different too. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, not God who helped us defeat enemies, God who witnessed us endure. The dominant American story is still built around innocence, inevitability, and exceptionalism. Lift Every Voice and Sing introduces a competing emotional truth that America is also a story of survival through state-sanctioned violence, exclusion, and forced negotiation with power. When you put those two songs side by side, you're not just comparing music. There are two versions of American identity: conquest versus endurance, victory versus survival, domination versus collective rising. There's also a psychological importance here. A lot of political conflict in this country is really conflict over emotional storylines. War songs reinforce siege identity. We are under threat. We must defend. We must conquer when justified. Survival hymns reinforce collective endurance identity. We suffer, we remember, we rise together anyway. And also, when Black women sing this song on the biggest stage in American sports, it lands as moral witness. It sounds like history speaking in a voice that was never supposed to have survived long enough to sing on national TV. And for people invested in a myth of national historical innocence, that can feel like indictment, even when it is simply testimony. And if we really want to keep it all the way real, Lift Every Voice and Sing is actually closer to what people claim they want from a national song. It is about collective rising. It is about survival without glorifying violence. And it is about striving toward liberty rather than declaring it already perfected. And maybe that's the real discomfort, y'all. One song centers conquest, the other centers endurance. One says we won, the other says we survived and are still trying to become something better. So, if the country is going to keep having this fight every freaking February, maybe the more honest question isn't why the Black hymn feels political. Maybe it's why a war survival chant has been treated as emotionally neutral for so damn long. And maybe the answer is simple. One song protects mythology, the other tells truth. What a nation chooses to sing together is, eventually, what it chooses to become.
Yeah, it actually surprises me how few people actually know about Lift Every Voice and Sing. Um, so I figured I would just do a quick Google. Um, One of the reasons the song has endured so long is it was literally written, like debuted in 1900. So it came out during Jim Crow, when um, I'm sorry, blacks were just like nominally American, or American citizens. So Lift Every Voice and Sing is a hymn with lyrics by James Weldon Johnson, written in the late 1800s and set to his music, J. Rosamond Johnson. Written from the context of African Americans in the late 19th century, the hymn is a prayer of thanksgiving to God as well as a prayer for faithfulness and freedom, with imagery that evokes the biblical exodus from slavery to the freedom of the promised land. Premiered in 1900, Lift Every Voice and Sing was communally sung within Black American communities, while the NAACP began to promote the hymn as a Negro national anthem in 1917, with the term Black National Anthem similarly used in the present day. It has been featured in 49 different Christian hymnals, and it has also been performed by various African American singers and musicians. So essentially, my point is that the when Lift Every Voice and Sing was premiered, blacks were basically segregated, and in essence, they were a nation within a nation. So it has historical significance, for Black people, just as much historical significance as the national anthem does, if not more. And I'm sorry if, MAGA blacks and other people, due to either their own, ignorance, or they just never received the education either at home or um, in school. But Lift Every Voice and Sing is every bit as significant to legacy Black Americans as the national anthem was. And I'll remind you that there was a good portion in time when blacks weren't even allowed into the armed services other than, as like stewards or servants of some sort. So there was a time when the national anthem didn't really apply to Black people. So You don't need a black national anthem. Hey, to each his own, Dave. But I will say this: don't get your feelings hurt when I slap down the ignorance when I see it on my channel. And you know, I'm not wedded to the black national anthem or lift every voice and sing, but I am ashamed when black people don't know their own history. I'm truly ashamed. So take that for what it's worth there, Deacon Dave. What's up, Wale? Long time no see.
Stanley!
How you doing?
Stanley! I'm doing good. You remember that show from the 40s and 50s used to start off like that?
No.
Oh, wow, that's so beautiful. Yeah, it was one of them soap opera type comedy shows.
Yeah, I used to listen to a lot of them. It's been years since I've heard any of them. Now that's not that's not the one that Jack Benny had.
No, Jack Benny and the
Rochester.
That was another one too. That was another good one too.
Right.
Jack Benny. Yeah, but all of it's good. Yeah, man, I saw that maptation on your thumbnail, and I wanted a copy of it. Because I've been seeing it periodically here. So I wonder where to get a copy of that so I could look at it and see what they're
hold on
talking
one
about.
sec. I'll put the link in the back. Hold on one second.
Beautiful. Do it.
Yeah, I got it offline. It was created. It was the map was created in like the 17th century.
I heard.
So let me see. Let's see.
I was looking at a lot of old maps, even as far as 1100. It still had Greenland as not like it is now.
Right.
I'm gonna just put it that way. So, and I saw one that go back even further than what you're talking about. I don't know if it's to go back further or whatever, but around the same, you know, incidental time periods and shit. They had the continent that you're on. They had that the Americas. They had that on the map. How they had that before Columbus? I don't know, but you know, they'll work it out. They got that's what I wanted to say too. I say, you say. People don't know their history, and I was cracking up because I am of a mind that a history is not the past. History is a story about the past, but history.
Well, yeah, it's an interpretation. Past might actually be a better word, but remember, past is more or less the actual events, and the history is a description of the past.
And it's usually a what do you call it? Subjective perspective based on and not only subjective, also usually corrupted. And then it's based on, like somebody said it one time. I'm sure you've heard it.
I mean, if you're going to look at it that way, no history, all the history books are descriptions, and nothing's 100% accurate. There's no way to be 100% accurate.
There was a novel historian that his quote is still used in I had somebody Google it a couple of days ago, and it goes like this: history is a lie agreed upon, because that's how it goes.
I don't know that I would be that cynical about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the guy that was a historian, a famous, historian, that's the funny part, he was teaching his students. And my first history teacher, who was from Scandinavian country, the first history teacher I had as a European teacher,
right,
he was from a Scandinavian country, and that was the first thing he said when he opened up class on the very first day. The very first thing he said, he wrote history up on the board, and he said, "What is history?" And he said, I'll tell you, history is a lie agreed upon. Now let's get to it. And that's how we did. You know, because it's a story, first of all, and people hate to say that. It's a story. That's why I say
Right.
history. And we all know that as it used to be a little line say, if the lion wrote history, it would be different. Or the predator or the prey or something. I forget how it goes. You've heard that story. The hunter
More or
writes,
less.
right? Yeah, more or less. Something similar to that. If the prey wrote the history, it'll be different.
Well, that's probably true.
So I just thought of it. I do want that thing. I'm still looking at it.
Yeah, I'm here it is.
There you go. You're a brilliant man. Thank you.
Here, I'll put the link in the back.
Yeah. Or the person I told you that said motherfucker like you do, cut me loose because I told him, I said, listen, they wanted to tell me a story. I said, hey, don't tell me that story right now.
Wait. What do you mean they cut you loose?
Yeah, man, they don't want to see or talk to me no more because I told them not to tell me a story. One of their
another content creator?
Oh no. Just somebody. I told you I met them and they to say the word like you say, motherfucker. They said just like you do, and like twice as often. And
oh wow.
I said, don't tell me that story. Tell me another story. I don't want to hear that particular story right now. They got upset and tried to tell me anyway. So I said, listen, I'm asking you not to tell me the story and you're still telling it to me. It's like you're shitting on me. I'm telling you, don't shit on me, right? Just let that story go. Go to another story. I ain't telling you not to be a storyteller. Just tell me a different story. And they got upset and said that I said that their story was shit or their life, because they were talking about their life, you know. Everybody got a history, as they say.
Right.
That's just double entendre. You like them words where you say the same thing 2 times.
Yep. I don't know. You know, I have spent probably the last month just marveling at how people can take words and they can read paragraphs into a sentence. And I just kind of shake my head sometimes.
Mm.
So
some of that's just a matter of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You got an echo or something on your end.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Do you have another window? Another YouTube session? Because sometimes what'll happen is you'll do StreamYard, but you'll leave the YouTube live. You'll leave the volume on. You got to turn the volume off the YouTube tab, so you don't get an echo.
Oh, I did that right away. I'm used to that, so I
Okay.
do
Well,
that right away.
it seems to have gone away now. I was going to say, I showed that a lot of this is kind of revolving around the Super Bowl, which was one of probably the most controversial Super Bowl I can remember, where you got the president mad at the halftime show. Turning Point USA did their own halftime show as an alternative, which they had Kid Rock, which is just totally like nobody remembers who Kid Rock is. And he wasn't that popular when he was popular, at least to people like me. But Bad Bunny was just like a huge topic today on Sharon Bracey's show, which, by the way, Sin, I know you're out there somewhere. I generally do not watch Sharon Bracey's show, even though I do subscribe to it. Nightish was on the panel. That's why I watched some of it. I was just curious to know what he was having to say. And again, it was like the 999th day of talking about either Corey Holcomb or Anton Daniels or both. So they were talking about Bad Bunny, and somehow or another, the Bad Bunny stuff got connected to Corey Holcomb stuff. And it was just like a really surreal panel where nobody had good points, but everybody thought they had good points. And it was just I want to say it was a hoot, but it really wasn't. It was kind of sad, to be honest. It's like, how do you have 10 adults on a panel and none of you have good points? It's like every point presented had flaws. No, actually, that's not true, Brian. That's fake news. They had nowhere near. You're that's the Super Bowl numbers. That's not Turning Point USA. You probably got that off of Fox News or something. So anyway, this next thing is Soch 119, and they talked about Bad Bunny briefly. So I figured since we did lift up your voice and sing, the start of the Super Bowl, we'd talk. I'd see what this sociology professor and his students have to say about Bad Bunny, the halftime show. Okay, CKJ3, I'll be going for at least 4 hours. Now I watched a clip on YouTube like yesterday morning, and I mean, it looked fun. I haven't watched the Super Bowl in probably 10 years, but Bad Bunny, the controversy around it at least made me want to see that particular clip of the halftime show. And I mean, it looked fun. It looked islandish. There was an actual wedding, and there were kids on the set, part of the wedding stuff. So it actually looked wholesome. It looked fun. And somehow or another, Black YouTube makes something that's fairly innocuous into something that's either pedophilia or domestic abusive. They just tend to be able to take the most innocuous shit and pretend it's toxic, and they will stand 10 toes down on the histrionics. So that's what made Sharon's show so interesting. So, okay, islandish. Yeah, that's the word I used. It's a made up word there, Brian. Oh, do you know Queen Sunkissed, Wale?
No, I was
All right.
just saying that.
You would probably find her show interesting.
Okay, I'll check it out then.
I think she said she's a hoodoo practitioner.
Oh, beautiful.
So you might actually have some things in common.
Oh, sure. There you go.
She's got a show. She does like a meditation sort of show. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll do this. This is a fairly, yeah, she's pretty nice. This is a short-ish video. They usually do like hour-long videos. But they had an exam. So, by the way, everybody, if you're a content creator, feel free to drop your links in the chat.
Oh, beautiful.
So let's play this and see what they have to say. This is Penn State University, by the way.
Okay.
Let's skip over this part.
Yeah. Hey, tell people who come in that they can just go to 101 if they want. Okay. Cool. There's a lot of seats down here, but whatever. Okay. So
What am I doing?
Okay, so
Oh,
let's start. Um, I hey, so the way we're going to do this is we will have I'm gonna talk for
you,
35 minutes or so, 40 minutes, and then we'll take an attendance quiz, and then we'll take the quiz, okay, or the exam, whatever. We're good. So, but make sure you put your laptops away though, because you don't need your laptops out. Well, you need because if you haven't studied by now, you're not gonna. If you don't know it by now, you're not gonna know it, man. So put your laptops away. Am I right, bro? I'm right. Yeah. Yeah. Yo, at the top. Yo, laptops.
what's that?
Yo, top row. Yo, not only do you have your laptops out, you're also talking. Yeah, thanks, man. Over here, we're good? Everybody good? Okay, so what I want to, I've been kind of watching the bunny problems that we have, and we did a class on this last semester, but which was interesting. It was cool. It was a very cool class. But I thought, you know what? Let me come back to it because I feel like I have some things to say. I have some things I want to say about this. So first off, go to the first slide. So I pulled up CNN yesterday morning or yesterday afternoon or whenever it was, and these are two headlines. And I thought, my God, we are a very interesting nation. You know what I mean? I mean, it's CNN, right? So whatever it is. I mean, CNN obviously leans left, but probably Fox or any other news outlet would have a very similar headline. And I thought, this is kind of wild. That how we can have very different perspectives on something that seems like it really wouldn't be that controversial. Just, I mean, it's an entertainer that's entertaining at a football game, but somehow it becomes this major controversy. And what I want to do is try to just have a conversation about it, say some.
Yeah, it's literally called a culture war, which has been going on for probably, I would actually say the culture war came to my attention. I guess you could say it's been going on since a little bit before, but in my opinion, the culture war really started round about the civil rights movement. So you'd be talking, 1954 or so. Now I could be wrong. I'm not a sociologist, but just in my reading, I would say it pretty much started round about the time of the end of segregation.
What kind of cultural wars, Stanley? I don't recognize this.
Well, I mean, at root, it's a left and right issue, but then in that issue, there's a class element, there's a race element. There are liberals versus conservatives. Now it's MAGA versus the left.
Everybody, MAGA versus everybody.
They talk about the liberal establishment is taking over universities. It's just a mess. They want patriotic education in the schools.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
What mean? Patriotic education?
Education. And yeah, what does that mean?
Well, in my mind, what it means, and this is just my interpretation. Okay, there's a lot of noise on your end, Wale. Essentially what it is, I mean, in my mind, it's actually liberal with a capital L versus MAGA. Now, you could say it's liberal versus conservative, but a good portion of what people would call conservative, at least center right would be considered at least classical liberal. It is, to me, it really comes down to what you believe as far as race goes. Patriotic education wants to minimize anything in American history that could be a blemish on the reputation of the United States. Slavery being chief among them. There are other things that rise up. Anti-Semitism will be a big part of that. Definitely the genocide of Native Americans, Manifest Destiny being painted as something good when it was really mass murder. Manifest Destiny was essentially genocide. So you don't want kids to know, especially white kids. You don't want to know. You don't want to know that, that they don't want to emphasize, or they want to minimize that, say George Washington hunted a slave from the president's desk. He was a slave hunter. He did it on the American.
I just heard within the past month, I don't know exactly what day, I heard, what's his name, the guy that's there now in that presidential capacity, he used the exact term manifest destiny.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something you learn in high school history. Their basically manifest destiny meant that, America was destined to be, the whole continent, going west was inevitable. Progress, human progress even. America was destined by God to take over the whole continent, or all the lower 48 states. And that's not necessarily so. It was
And now
basically,
he has extended it to Greenland and Venezuela, he said, and other countries he plans.
yeah, well, he's kind of taken up that, he's taken that back up. But the bottom line is that manifest destiny in Venezuela is the perfect example where, anywhere manifest destiny takes America, death will be there, will be the result. A bunch of people killed in Venezuela, namely the Cubans who were guarding or protecting Maduro. So, and then we know about, the Trail of Tears, and, just that westward expansion eradicated, killed a lot of people who'd been there for millennia. So that's pretty much the culture war. It really does come down to when they say America is a white man's country, that's the culture war.
Things, and then I'll open it up to some questions when I'm finished. But
That's
to
what
kind
this
of bring
guy's
us,
gonna
help
say?
help some
Okay,
perspective on
I'm
this.
sorry, what?
Is that what this guy's going to say?
I don't know what he's going to say. I haven't watched it.
Oh, it's just something.
And how it is that people could have very different understanding of things. So first, okay, let me say something about Puerto Rico. So the U.S. acquired Puerto Rico in the war against Spain at the end of the 19th century. So we acquired, right? It was a Spanish territory, and we acquired it. And these are some things. By the way, this is the most I'm ever going to have on a slide ever, the entire semester. So, it's a territory, and we own it, basically. And Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. And that means that we have an island of people who are citizens, and the primary language is Spanish on this island. So we can say, it's English is not the official language of the United States, but it certainly is the language of Puerto Rico, because it is the language of Puerto Rico. Even though most everybody also speaks Spanish, it is the dominant language in Puerto Rico. So if you've been to Puerto Rico, well, for me, as someone who's not a native speaker of Spanish, it doesn't sound like Spanish to me, because Puerto Ricans speak so fast, man, I can hardly keep track of it. But these are citizens. Puerto Ricans can vote in the presidential primaries, but not in the elections. Okay, so I don't know. So that has some meaning for sure for deciding who's mostly going to be probably going to be voting. Well, I don't know if we're going to mostly vote Democrat, so it's more important in Democratic primaries, but also has a voting representative. So there are actually, instead of 435 representatives, we have 437 because there's one in Puerto Rico and one in Guam, but they don't vote. They don't have any power. So they go around Congress and they make arguments for certain things, but they can't vote. Okay? And Puerto Ricans pay local, state, and most federal taxes, but just not federal income taxes. So that means Puerto Ricans pay, and citizens in Guam, by the way, pay into Social Security, they pay into Medicare. So if you know Puerto Ricans who get Social Security, it's because they paid into it their whole lives. And so it's important to see this. And Bad Bunny, this artist, is from Puerto Rico. So you can imagine that Puerto Rico is really important for him. You know, like you just sort of start there. Just like many artists have areas of the country and part of their lives that are really important for them. You know, there's a tribe called Red, is a hip hop group of Native Americans that has come out of the Navajo community out in Arizona and New Mexico. And they sing about life on the reservation. And Bad Bunny sings or raps about life in Puerto Rico to a great degree. So like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. You know, this is very much, Puerto Rico is very much part of the United States. So see, you have to say like, all right. You know, we have a kind of it's a strange relationship because, you know, as kind of the owners of a territory, but it nonetheless is like, all right, this is kind of, all right, go to the next slide. And by the way, about half of the island of Puerto Rico, the eligible voters voted in 2020 for full U.S. statehood. They're like, yeah, we want to be the 51st state in the United States. But half of Puerto Ricans are going, you know what, we kind of like, well, a small segment are saying we want complete independence. We don't want to be part of anything. We just want to be our own nation. But, you know, a lot of people, they look at some other nations that have that, like Haiti, and they're like, I'm not so sure that's a good idea. So other people are like, let's stay where we're at. So there's a lot of conversation in Puerto Rico, also in Guam about this. But a much smaller number of people in Guam are arguing for full U.S. statehood. People in Guam mostly are saying like, okay, and Guam, by the way, is an island in the South Pacific. It's basically a military base for the United States. And so like, okay, you know, there we go. All right, so here, take a look at this. We have 340 million U.S. citizens, approximately, in the United States, obviously, right? 44 million, that's 14%, are Spanish speakers, meaning that they really speak Spanish. You know, and so they speak Spanish in the home, they speak Spanish with their relatives. Spanish is really the second language in the United States. And so now you might say, well, why is that? Why don't they learn English? Right? Well, people do. And immigrants today are most like immigrants throughout our history, that, you know, the first generation mostly hangs on to their language. And if you've tried to learn a language, and most of you have tried, you've been forced in high school or forced in college to learn a second language, and you've failed. Most of you have failed. Either A, because you didn't put enough time into it, or B, just because it's too difficult. And so imagine now moving to Kuwait, or moving to Puerto Rico, or moving to Germany, or moving somewhere where you got to learn the language, Korea. I've been trying to learn Korean for 3 years. I can't even having a conversation just to say one word in Mandarin, man, one sound in Mandarin. And I'm like, I can't, it's so hard. My brain doesn't, it's so hard to do that. So imagine that you move somewhere to China and you got to learn Chinese. If you're the age that most of you are, that all of you are, you're probably going to give up pretty soon. You're going to learn enough that you need to learn. But imagine being the age of your parents or being my age when it's really not, you're just going to get by. Okay, so people do that. So there are a lot of Spanish speakers. They come here, they're of a certain age, and they're like, okay, I'm going to learn enough English. And then I'm going to kind of stop at some point because I'm going to live in some kind of community where people speak a lot of Spanish. Like in Miami, when I go to Miami, I speak in Spanish in Miami. I can just go anywhere in Miami and just go to the get a coffee at the Starbucks and just speak in Spanish, and they're going to speak back in Spanish. Everybody speaks Spanish. And so I'm like, yeah, all right, that's cool, right? Most people, by the second generation, the children of people who immigrated, the vast, vast majority learn the language of their new home. That's true here. It's true all over the world. It's as true today as it was 100 years ago, right? And so in most of places around the world, when you try to speak someone's language, most people receive you in a positive way. Sometimes maybe people don't. It's like, you should speak English better, right? If you get that response, then you're not going to really keep learning it. You're going to be, well, that's it, man. I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to just stick with my language, okay? So here, so 44 million, that's a lot of Spanish speakers. So why is that? Well, look here. This is at the time that this nation was being established. Look, Spain, the Spanish Empire, either had control over or influence over more than 2/3 of the United States. When the US was established, all these people were speaking Spanish, except the Native Americans who were living in or they weren't reservations at the time, but living all over that part that's red and part that's pink. At the time this nation established. So look, what happened was, it's not that Spanish speakers are taking over the United States. It's the United States really took over Spanish people who were Spanish speakers. So it's like, okay, well then what happened, right? Well, go to the next slide. Look at the pink here on the left side. That's all Mexico. So 1835. 25 years before the Civil War, that's all Mexico. Going all the way up to what is now Oregon and Washington. It's like, this is all Spanish speaking. It's kind of interesting. It's like, whoa, no wonder we have so many Spanish speakers. When you go to the Southwest, my wife and I went to the Southwest. We flew into Phoenix 2 years ago because we wanted to see what was going on with immigration. So we went in the Southwest. We flew into Phoenix. We got a car and we went due south. Everywhere we went, people were speaking Spanish. On the reservations, we went to Native American reservations, people were speaking Spanish. White people speaking Spanish. Black people speaking Spanish. Spanish speakers, people of Spanish ancestry, Hispanic ancestry speaking Spanish. People spoke English also, but it was everywhere was just Spanish. It's like, yeah, of course, because the United States overtook this whole area of this country that is Spanish speaking. So, when you think, it's really fascinating, right? Now, go back. All right, so look. Can you go back one, actually? So you see the purple part? And then kind of going up a little bit in the pink to the left of the purple part? That's all Brazil. Brazil is Portuguese, was a Portuguese colony. So the Pope in the Treaty of Tordesillas, the Pope divided the world up in between Spain and Portugal, the Western world, the New World. And Portugal got that part, and Spain got everything else. And so when Bad Bunny the other day, and by the way, I'm not a big Bad Bunny fan. I'm really not a Bad Bunny fan at all. I mean, I like artists who people who can stand up on stage like a Taylor Swift. Sometimes I watch these folks, man, and I'm just like, how do you do that? How do you do that? You know, like right now, sometimes I go outside of myself and I'm down here by myself. There's nobody supporting me. It's me. And I think, dude, how do you have the cojones to do that? Why do you think that anybody is interested in anything you have to say? Why do you think you have anything to say? And why do you think, why would you expect them to listen to you? Taylor Swift, Bad Bunny, one after another. It's like, dude, how do you go out on stage with a microphone, man? Just you and a microphone, and go do what you do. Taylor Swift, same thing. How do you do it? All of these artists like that? I have such high regard for people's ability to do that and what that takes, you know? Okay, but I'm not a Bad Bunny. I'm not the music. I'm not really into trap music, you know? I'm not into reggaeton. I like reggae, but it's just like, look, that the beat. I'm a drummer, okay? I play hand drums, but I play a trap set. I started playing a trap set when I was 12, and so I'm really into drums, and I'm into the snare drum, but man, it's just too much. It just gets. Sometimes I'll put trap music or reggaeton on when I'm working at home, you know, kind of doing in my office. I put music on, and I'll put a channel on. Like I'll put music from Sierra Leone or Tunisia. I'll find a radio station in Tunis, and I'll put it on. And I'll listen to Tunisian radio all day long. I'm an ethnomusicologist. Like I love music from all over the world. So I listen to Bad Bunny and I listen to reggaeton, but it's not my thing, man. I'm just like, these beats they're complex and they're interesting, but they're too similar. They don't do it for me. But as an artist, to do that stuff, I'm like, man, that's pretty intense. So when he said the thing about God bless the Americas, right? God bless America. God bless America is Canada, U.S., Mexico is North America, okay? We don't know. We think it's named after Amerigo Vespucci. He was an Italian map maker that traveled with Columbus on some of the voyages. And then you have Central America, and then you have South America, but it's all the Americas. So when you're in South America, you talk about Los Americanos. They're all Los Americanos. So when Bad Bunny said at the end, God bless America, he said, God bless the whole continent, North and South and Central America. And so that's why all those flags come out. It's like paying homage, and including the U.S. flag, the Canadian flag, the Mexican. It's paying homage to all of these people who have been such a part of the United States.
Well, let's not be totally naive. I mean, a lot of it was double entendre, you know, to since Wale brings it up. It was a subtle reminder that in the Americas, or just in America, that there's more than just the United States. I think that's kind of what was behind that. So, you know, the United States of America is nicknamed America as a diminutive. Diminutive, I think that's what it would be called. But in reality, there's a ton of countries in the Americas.
And the U.S. has played such a role in Latin America, in the history of Latin America, and how Latin American economy and politics have played out over time, that, man, we are all in this together. So when he said that, I was like, okay, that's cool, man. That's cool. Like show that, because that's a really good thing to really begin to understand. Also, there's another thing you need to know. In Spanish, we call people from the United States estadounidense, los estadounidenses. Soy estadounidense. I am United Statesian. But we don't have that in English. I can say I'm from the United States, but in Spanish, when I'm speaking Spanish, I say soy estadounidense. I'm United Statesian. So that's really an important piece here. See, here we think we sort of, we just over the years, we start saying like, okay, I'm American. Yeah, I'm American. And we all know what that means. But sometimes I'm in South American man, or I'm with Latinos, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm American. And they'll be like, dude, wait, what? It's like, I'm American too. Like I had a roommate from El Salvador, and he was always like, dude, I'm American. I'm like, yeah, you're from El Salvador. He's like, I'm American. He was always pushing that. We always had fun with it, but this is a thing, so understand that. And you'll see this, EEUU, right? EEUU, that's the United States in Spanish instead of USA, okay? So here, let me show you. There's the US. Okay, so here's the US population. Take a look here, man. On the left, under the age of 18, Hispanics and Latinos, 26% in 2020, 26% of the US population under the age of 18 are Hispanic or Latino, okay? And Latino includes Brazil. But look at 2060, 32%, man. And these people are going to be speaking Spanish because it's part of a culture. It's very much part of a culture. And it's like, my ancestors came from.
Let's do a quick check of folks in the chat room. So I know people like Brian Nichols. You've probably all got headaches right now. Your heads are about to explode. Spanish is not going anywhere. So, this why can't they speak English bullshit? It's just that. It's bullshit.
From England, from Ireland, and they lost Irish. None of them spoke Irish.
What's up, Nightish?
I came to hang out with the smart guys. I just got kicked off a panel where they told me I was.
Oh, really?
Black. Yeah.
Whose panel was that? Just out of curiosity, because you've been blazing that trail.
No, I apologize on your panel the other day, but Chaotic Truth. That was a channel where I was told I wasn't black.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah,
but I mean, they don't think Chaotic doesn't think anybody who isn't like, their trope. And I've talked with Chaotic and a bunch of times about this. Essentially, and a lot of it is just them just messing with people. But most what I call legacy Black Americans with roots deep into American history. The average is about 20% European heritage genetically. So he's basically saying, it's his way of saying, hey, if you actually it is the tethers, the people who have, say, 2 African parents with no European heritage, those are the true Black people. So his thing is most Black Americans aren't, quote, Black because they have European heritage. And you know what? That stuff used to get a rise out of me. These days, you know what? Whatever. Just whatever. Chaotic. Because, that kind of sociology only flies on your show. Elsewhere in the real world, people will just laugh you out of whatever panel you're on. Chaotic's been thrown off a few panels for that bullshit. So don't feel too bad.
I don't have no feelings associated with it at all.
And it's also wonderful to know that I was your second choice.
Shout out to the Nigerian that thinks he's more Black. and saying that John Galt is more black because of his skin complexion. So the Nigerian and the slang.
Oh yeah, well JP's more black, etc.
Yes,
JP will
yes.
tell you the same thing.
Yes.
So I've just learned, you know what? I was actually up on a chaotic panel. Was it last week or the week before? Because there were some people I just wanted to go up there and mess with. So don't feel bad about it. What we're talking about here is Bad Bunny. And
yes, I saw that.
oh, I saw your stellar performance on Sharon's show. And I subscribe to Sharon's show, but I don't usually watch it unless the topic is interesting. But I happened to see that you were on the panel. So of course I had to tune in for as long as I could take it.
Yeah, I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
Well, my favorite part, and the only comment, I think I made a couple comments in the chat, and one of them Sharon actually put up. Somebody was talking about Uncle Jeff, or somebody was talking about, we as a community need to basically do vigilante justice. We know that, somebody's being abusive to. Well, no, it shouldn't happen. And my comment in the chat was there are too many stupid people to allow vigilante justice, because half the people are going to fucking get it wrong. They'll be killing and beating up the wrong people. So, if the cops can't get it right, I don't suspect that a bunch of Wall Street willies are going to get it right.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I'll go there. So anyway, I am after this. We got a few minutes left of this Bad Bunny lecture, and there's some boring stuff coming up if I get to it. But feel free to stop me, because this was an audible. I wasn't actually going to show this.
Irish, right? I go back to Ireland and I have to hear people speaking Irish, but I have ancestors from France, ancestors from Germany. They all gave up the language because they came here, and they came here specifically, but the U.S. came to Spanish-speaking America. And okay, the people are going to keep speaking. They're going to learn English too, but they're going to continue to speak Spanish, okay? Now, look at age 65 or over. That's 21% in 20.
That's actually a good point. The United States, through Manifest Destiny, annexed a bunch of the Southwest, which was originally Spanish speaking. You're not going to be able to stamp out that culture. So we're never going to have English as an official language in the United States, mainly because a large portion of the West is Spanish speaking.
So Manifest Destiny, that's one of my favorite ones. That means whatever I see, I was ordained by God to have it, right?
Well, in essence, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I when I hear Manifest Destiny, and I didn't as a kid, because I learned about that sort of stuff in grade school and high school English. But now that I'm up in age and, I've read, way more than I ever read in high school, it's essentially, I associate American Manifest Destiny with genocide.
Stanley,
because they had to take.
Stanley, let me tell you what I want. Give me like 3 good books to read for like direction and work.
What do you mean direction and
I
work?
heard Napoleon Hill. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all that stuff. But something.
Oh, I don't ever read like self-help books.
Oh, you just read, period.
Well, I read what's interesting, but these days it's mostly been history and biography. Before my up to maybe age 40, it was almost all literary fiction. Now I've read self-help books occasionally, but it's not my thing. I don't usually find those books real helpful, because a lot of I heard today Uncle Jeff, and I had no idea who Uncle Jeff was. Apparently, he's a
He's
comedian.
a stand-up comedian.
Well, he was telling some stories about, that were supposedly apropos of some of the points he was trying to make.
He's out of place outside of stand-up comedy. A lot of things that he says that he thinks trying to be, he doesn't really, he don't really know.
Well, it's not that. It's just I couldn't relate.
It's not relatable.
Right. So he told the story about his ex-wife being in an abusive relationship, and I was trying to figure out how that related to anything. There was a lot of disjointedness in that panel discussion today. Like, I couldn't figure out how they equate Bad Bunny to Corey Holcomb.
Bad Bunny conversation is a bad conversation also, because he was singing in Spanish. He should have been like at a soccer game, not at a football game.
No, Puerto Rico and the American Southwest, those are Americans. Puerto Ricans
I don't disagree
are
with you
U.S.
there,
citizens.
but I'm saying that the majority of Americans intellectually they're not speaking Spanish.
Okay, well, the majority of Americans aren't black, but I would venture to say in a certain age range, the majority of youth listen to rap. Most black people don't live in the ghetto, but I'm constantly told that the problems in the ghetto are my problems because I'm black. So I don't want to hear that bullshit about majorities. They are people frankly aren't smart enough to make the arguments that they make, especially on a Sharon's panel.
Ultimately, it's that. But I do need 3 good books about. You say you don't read them now, so I don't even know if you can.
I haven't read like you're talking about like one of these books, like I'm trying to think, like How to Win Friends and Influence People, like a Dale Carnegie type of book.
Yes, that kind of thing.
You know what? The best thing to do would be to go to Amazon and look up what's popular on Amazon. But you want it to be black oriented, right?
Yeah.
There probably stuff like that on YouTube. There are videos out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I'm about to be in a fight, and I need some inspirational.
A fight?
Yeah.
Like a fist fight?
Well, not a fist. If it's a fist fight, it's my last one. But not a fist fight. But I'm going through some things, and I need some inspiration. I was over there on Chaotic Channel, and he was talking this stuff about John. I'm like, if I saw John personally, if I would punch him in the face, and that man kicked me off the panel. He said, "I got to get you up out of here."
Right. Well, apparently the show is dedicated to John, but let me put it to you this way: what Chaotic does, and I think it's actually kind of like a very complicated long con. Basically, what people it's a real sophisticated.
I think it's really just they have their lovers. John, Chaotic and John. Chaotic is a lover of men. He got some kind of weird.
All right. Well,
freaky...
what I'm saying is that there were you remember once Jesus was captured and put on trial, Pontius Pilate basically made the backhanded compliment that, hey, isn't he the king of the Jews? Okay, that's what Chaotic is doing. He will take someone like a John Galt and basically say, well, hey, John Galt's an entrepreneur. He's kind of, he doesn't need to work a job
drunk weed
to make
smoking
it
entrepreneur.
right. But what I'm trying to say is that he is independent. He can drink and John said it on a panel the other day. He can drink and smoke all day, and who cares because he can afford to do it. Okay, well, that is really a warped view of success. It is success, but it's not the kind of success you would want your kids to aspire to. Well, what someone like a chaotic does is go, well, hey, he's the king of the blacks because he doesn't have to work for the white man.
So
He's living the black American dream. He can smoke and drink all day and abuse his tenants. That's
so
what every black
Chaotic is
man
Pontius
should have.
Pilate, and
Well,
John Bell is supposed to be
I
the
would.
Jesus?
Well, that's a rough analogy. I don't mean literally. I'm basically saying what chaotic does is he takes people who are successful in their own way, I guess, and he'll say that fuck being a doctor, fuck being a smarty arty, fuck going to school. You can be successful just like John and do drink and smoke all you want, and you don't need to go to school for that. Blacks are fooling themselves if they think that they need to do, 16 years of school just to be a doctor, just to be a smarty arty. You could be successful and drink and smoke all day and make a good living and never go to school. Therefore, John is living what blacks really want to be. Blacks really want to be John Galt, not Barack Obama. It's too much work to be Barack Obama. You can put in almost no work and be John Galt. So it's a real perverted way. That's why JP doesn't have to work for the white man. He's got all these welfare benefits and he hangs out on YouTube all day. That's the kind of success black people should be aspiring to instead of reading all these books. That's their shtick. And I can never tell whether they really mean it or whether it is literally a shtick and they're just playing a YouTube persona. And at this point in time, I've learned that why worry about it? I'll go up on their panel. If there's someone I want to talk to, have fun with it. And then I'll see in a month when you do something else I'm interested in. I used to kind of get wrapped around the axle about that sort of stuff. These days I don't. I got my own show. I can pretty much do what I want to do. And, watching Sharon's show was interesting. But I also want to say that, look, a lot of the comparisons, like that one dude who said that the video he saw where Bad Bunny's dancing in front of a boy with a tight red leather outfit on. Yeah. I went and watched that video. That motherfucker, dude, he should almost be put in jail or fined for slander. The video, that's not what the video. He wasn't dancing in front of kids at all, not once. So where he got that from, and this is a good example. Now, this guy who's kind of trusted on that panel goes up and says his daughter showed it to him, and everybody in the panel's like, oh, well, they're buying into it. So I just went and Sharon to his
just gay. It's not.
Sharon, to his credit, also went and looked at the video and debunked it. People on these panels get misinformation and then they take it to other panels. Now, Bad Bunny, whatever you think of Bad Bunny, he did not do anything that was even remotely pedophilic.
No,
not even 0.5%.
It wasn't PDF, but it was gay. And just like
okay, who gives a fuck about that? Dude, discussion.
I'm agreeing with you. It
right. Well, what does gay have to do with it? What does gay really have to do with it when they're saying he was doing gay stuff or sexually provocative stuff in front of a kid? That is an outright lie.
Yeah.
Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that if nobody goes and fact checks, that kind of information will wind up on another panel, and a whole nother group of people are going to take that as truth. That's how.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of these panels on Black YouTube are fucked up. These
It's
people don't do
sensationalism.
they don't do any research on their own. If Uncle Jeff said it, then it must be truth. And I'm just using him, as a
Yeah,
hypothetical example.
It's just sensationalism.
King Picks, no, I didn't really. I mean, I looked at about half the video. They have the halftime special or the halftime performance on a YouTube video. I watched it. It was interesting, but it wasn't my thing. Part of it was the language.
Yeah, it wasn't PDF. It was just gay.
You know what? So what? It doesn't offend me. It doesn't affect me. People can do what they want to do.
Well, that's not shocking, Stanley, that you're not offended by gay stuff.
Well, I'm not offended because it doesn't concern me.
It doesn't. I'm not concerned about it either.
I think all these people getting their secret panties in a twist over what someone else is doing or displaying.
You think the guys are in panties?
You know what? The way they get them in a twist, yeah.
Okay. Shout out to the shout outs. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, to be honest, that's the first time I've ever seen Bad Bunny. Now, I do understand the argument that, hey, I'm not in his demographic, because he's some sort of rapper or something like that. The young kids may be influenced, but I'm also going to say this, and this is why I talk about parenting so often. I don't think that Bad Bunny or Little Nas X, or if they're not going to have an effect on children if they're parented correctly. That means parents need to be involved.
Parents aren't parenting correctly.
Well, then that's not Little Nas X's fault. That's not Bad Bunny's fault. That's the parents' fault.
Parents' fault, yeah. And a lot of
so all this pearl clutching about kids being exposed to that sort of stuff. Well, if their parents don't let them be exposed to it, they won't be. So I think it's a cop out. I think these parents get on these panels and they whine about the external influences. If you're a parent, you can minimize external influences. And not only that, you can influence your kids when they have to go to school or, wherever. Parents should be the strongest influence. And I know I'm talking about a utopia, but the people up on these panels whining about kids being exposed to this stuff, what are you doing to make sure your kids aren't? Let other parents worry about their kids. This community stuff that they preach, I could live with a bunch of competent people talking about what needs to be done in a community, but 90% of the people I see on these panels are incompetent in their own lives, and their exposure to the larger community needs to be confined to YouTube panels because they're not competent. They can barely speak English, most of them. So I don't, that they're getting, that they're astounded or shocked by what a Corey Holcomb does. Well, he can barely speak English. How many of them have unsubscribed from his channel? That's what I want to know. So anyway, enough of my rant.
60 of people age 65 or over are going to be Hispanic and Latino, and almost every one of them is going to speak Spanish at some level. And they're also going to speak English, but they're going to speak Spanish. Okay. All right. Let me show you something. Okay. Go to the next one. So look, what's it mean for the United States? This is a map of change in the foreign-born population in the United States. The greener it is, the higher the percentage of change of foreign-born Americans, foreign-born people in those counties. These are all counties. Y'all, man, there's a change happening in the United States. And the change is growing numbers of foreign-born residents who have come to the United States or inhabited the United States in the past 40 years. And that's a lot of change. And, that's a lot to deal with. Because this is change. Change is it's difficult to deal with. Okay, but understand that we're going through a big transformation here. Okay, hold that for a second. Go to the next one, man. All right, so for me, let me say something about me really fast. That's not a problem for me, okay? It's not a problem for me personally. But I don't have the idea that it should not be a problem for you or other people. It's just not a big problem for me. Why? Because I travel, I've been to 50 countries. I've been to many of them, probably 10 of them, like 6, 8, or 10 times. I've spent 3 years of my life living abroad. I speak Spanish. I have friends all over the world. The fact that the United States is more global is not a problem for me personally. But go to the next one. But if I didn't have that, if this wasn't my job, I would look at that map of people of how there are more and more foreigners. Everywhere I turn, I'm seeing people from different countries around me. They're working at the 7-Eleven, they're working at the Home Depot, they're pumping my gas. My accountant wasn't born in the U.S. My lawyer wasn't born in the U.S. My doctor, the nurse, it's everywhere. In some places, everywhere you turn, there are all these people who weren't born here. And if I didn't really understand that or really call that in, I'd feel some kind of way about it. Maybe and it doesn't mean I'd be racist or ethnocentric or something like that. It just means that I'd feel unsettled because it's the future. It's not my history. It's not my culture. And so, for example, let me just say, if you're African American and you move to the Southwest, and your African American culture is really important to you, you move to the Southwest. It's not going to be that important. Because it's going to be about Hispanic culture. It's going to be about Native American culture. It's going to not be about African American culture. Or if you, suddenly imagine that 30 years from now, Nigerians became just dominant force in the United States, and suddenly black culture becomes Nigerian culture. How would that be? It's like, wait, but I'm not Nigerian. Why is it suddenly Nigerian culture everywhere? Yeah, well, because Nigerians, so many millions and millions of Nigerians came here, and that just became part of black culture here, and that's kind of the leading edge of black culture. So, you'd feel some kind of way about that. And, and the future's uncertain. So when I hear people like, oh my God, I don't know about this Bad Bunny thing, it's like it's the Super Bowl. Go to the next slide. It's the Super Bowl, man. There's nothing more American than the Super Bowl. And how do we get to Bad Bunny speaking in Spanish? And wait, he's only speaking in Spanish? Wait, what? I'm not so sure. I don't know how I feel about that. There's always a line that every one of us would feel uncomfortable. So, there are people that you're gonna feel uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, Bad Bunny, damn. Especially if you don't know the history of Spanish speaking in this country and you don't know the history of Puerto Rico. It's like, yeah, okay. We got how many, what Super Bowl was this? 70? What is that? What is it? 60? Okay, so we have 60 Super Bowls, 60 of them. On the 60th one, we have someone speaking in Spanish. We got 44 million Americans speaking Spanish. Like, all right, that's cool. That's all right. Okay? So, but just because you don't like it doesn't mean you're racist or ethnocentric or bigoted or something. It very much can mean like you're just not entirely comfortable. It's like, man, we're all going to be uncomfortable with something, man. Okay, so here, let me show you this. But let me get to the point here, okay? The real point. One thing you're not uncomfortable with is capitalism. U.S. football, 410 million global followers and fans, okay? Look at soccer or football, up to 5 billion around the world, okay? 410 million, up to 5 billion, okay?
Let me make one point here. This moral panic, what I don't even understand. They're talking about replacement. Are you talking about replacement theory, King Picks? If you are, that is basically that is, I don't even know what to call it other than stupid. How do you, with a birth rate that is plummeting, we probably, I'm going to tell you right now, this stance on immigration that Donald Trump has pretty much convinced his base is necessary. It's going to come back to bite the United States. It is a mistake. It needs to be much more organized. And I'm going to use a rough example, which is China's one-child policy, where for a while it seemed like a great idea to deal with the population issues. And it turned out to be one of the worst things to happen to China demographically. Same thing's going to happen with the United States with these falling birth rates. White people having a plummeting birth rate, they're going to be replaced whether they want to be or not, because there are going to be fewer of them. So I think it's kind of hilarious hearing people worry about replacement theory when it's going to happen naturally. It's gonna, even if they took immigration down to zero, the birth rate is going to take care of the replacement. So have fun with your moral panic.
Now, here's what I want you to do. I want to put you in the shoes of the NFL owners. Go to the next slide. Okay? The average value of a team in 2024 was $5.7 billion. And today, just 2 years later, 1.5 years later, not even 2 years later, 7.1, meaning the value of these teams are going up. That's a big investment, right? You know how you make money on an NFL team? You get more fans. Man, you get more fans. Have you wondered why the NFL, the MLB, Major League Baseball, the NBA, basketball, you ever wonder why they're like playing more and more games around the world? Why is the NFL playing a game in London? Why are they going to Tokyo and playing? Why are they going down to South America? Because they want more fans. Want more fans, man. Like you can only, here, let me show you this. And new fans, by the way, any new fan, go back. Any new fans are going to be young people. You're going to be young people. They're not going to be old people like me. They're going to be young people. So you want it, man, you want to go. It's a business decision. Go here. Go to the next one. Look at these ticket prices. I just pulled this up today. Highest is in Philly, by the way, 475. Who can afford to go to a game, man? Who can afford to go to every game? It costs a lot of money. Imagine you're going to take I'm a dad, I got 2 kids. I don't want to take my sons to a football game because I went with my dad. And I want to go back, right there. Stay right there. And I want to go back to,
I don't know, dude, it's funny. I've been to some Redskins games, and I was kind of excited thinking that, I can't wait till my son's like maybe 14, 15, right in that high school age range, to take him to a football game. And then I'm not going to even get deep into this one incident. Dude, NFL games are not family friendly. They fucking, at least the last game I went to, they serve hard liquor at those games. And it's just a bunch of drunk and belligerent people who are basically a menace to themselves and a menace to those around them. And I never took my son to that football game. Now, he's been to hockey games, which, believe it or not, was more family friendly. He's been to baseball games, Major League Baseball, NHL games. Football is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for kids. I would never take a kid to a football game. I'm not even sure I would take an older teenager. It's just really not the best of American humanity.
I want them to have the same experience I did. And like, I got to shell out over $1,200, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, damn. Okay, well, but the owners are going, hey, we paid a lot of money for these teams. We pay the players a lot of money. We need to get more money. So you're not going to pay more. We got to go somewhere else to get money. And so, yeah, the get-in average, by the way, in the NFL is $156. That's what I paid a few weeks ago. I was up in Winnipeg, and I went to a Winnipeg Jets game, and my wife and I paid $300 for 2 tickets, and they weren't really that good, the tickets for it. I'm like, who the hell? I'm sitting there with all these people, and I'm thinking, you're all rich people, because like if you're going to all these games, like how do you do this? Because damn. Okay, so let me ask you this question. All right, you're an NFL owner. Who do you want playing the Super Bowl, man? Who do you want? Who do you want? You want to attract new fans? You want to attract new fans. You want young people, because that's who you're going to get, not old people. You know, Hank Williams for me, but like whatever. Ozzy Osbourne. You want to? He's dead. Okay, so who you gonna go with? You're gonna go with whoever the hottest act is. Always, you're gonna go with that. It doesn't matter. You can play along. You know, you got politicians chirping out here about this is un-American, this is un-American. You're like, yeah, this is kind of un-American. Like, yeah, oh God, yeah, this guy, he's speaking in Spanish, whatever. Over here, you're going like, yo, man, bring on the bunny, man. We need more bunnies. Let me show you something. Look at this right here. Go to the next one. Bad Bunny, 2019. Bad Bunny's number 5. 2021, number 1. 2022, number 1. Taylor Swift knocks him down to number 2. Taylor Swift in the weekend knocked him down to number 3. 2025, Bad Bunny's back up, number 1. Man, if I'm an NFL owner, I want the bunny. Man, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. Dude, Bunny, come do your thing. And especially because he's going to perform for free. You know what I mean? This is capitalism. And then look, here, 108 million Spotify listeners. Here, look, 84 billion YouTube views, 51 million subscribers. Kid Rock has 3.1 million YouTube subscribers. Yeah. Bad Bunny's got 51 million. Kid Rock, his most popular video, has 600 million. Bad Bunny has 19 with over 1 billion listens on Spotify. That's not a critique of Kid Rock. It's like the dude's like, he's amazing, man. I watched his performance. I watched both performances, and Kid Rock's, he's on that stage alone, man, with the microphone. And you can be like, oh, yeah, look at that guy. That's like really whatever. Yo, man, you try that. You try that. Like, you know what I mean? You get up on stage with a microphone, man. You got, what do you have, just white shorts on and whatever. Go, you do that. Man, that takes, I'm like, dude, I give you all the credit in the world for that. I dislike certain things that you say and whatever. I mean, I wouldn't say them, I don't like that, but like, holy smokes, man. But you're no Bad Bunny. And they didn't call on Kid Rock to play the Super Bowl halftime. And next year, God willing, it will be Taylor Swift. And the next year after that, God willing, it will be some other international artist that we can bring more fans in, because that's capitalism. Oh my God, BTS, Blackpink, y'all, right? BTS or Blackpink. BTS is getting back together, you know what I mean? Imagine next year at the Super Bowl. Holy smokes, man. You got all of Asia. You get the whole world. BTS is like dominated the world. So anyway, this is just a way to help like understand some of this stuff, right? It's like, really, it's okay. You know, you want to understand how it is that we get into these conflicts with one another, but don't get caught up in the conflicts. Really kind of see what's going on, because that's what a class like this can teach us, to see these things from lots of different perspectives. Okay? Cool?
Kelvin, they have Penn State sociology department has some thing with some university in Korea. So he goes to Korea. The Koreans come to his university. So BTS is Korean, right? So I guess that's how he knows.
All right, ma'am. Thanks. Let's do the quiz.
All right. Well, that's the end of our Bad Bunny, Super Bowl stuff. I think that once again Donald Trump loses with this Super Bowl thing. He's actually racking up a bunch of L's. The Super Bowl had like a record audience. So in spite of Donald Trump not being there and TP USA trying to do a counter halftime show, didn't work. And that is what makes America great. Once America finally decides we got a fool for a president, I think America's already moving on, to be honest. I think America's already over Trump. He's just trying to get our attention. And speaking of our dear leader, this is somebody sent me a clip or made me aware of this clip from years ago. Let's see, when was this? This is from 1999. So let's play this.
Region is doing unbelievably well. I'm building a job on the west side, which is the largest job ever approved by the New York City Planning Commission. You see it going up along the West Side Highway. It's almost 10 million square feet. It's 18 buildings, and it's really going to be something. We're building a building that you probably heard of recently. It's the tallest residential tower anywhere in the world. It's 90 stories. People aren't happy about the fact that I'm building a 90-story building in New York City, but it's an as-of-right. It's called an as-of-right building, meaning you can do it by zoning, and it's going to be truly magnificent, right directly across from the United Nations. We just bought the General Motors building. We just completed Trump International Hotel and Tower, which just yesterday got the Mobile 5-Star Award. Only 4 in the country got it for its whatever it is, and it's been a tremendous success. We're doing a lot of other things, and I will tell you, a large percentage of the people, and especially in construction, that are building these great jobs are Black and minorities, and I'm very proud of it. We have close to 25%, and I think the number's going up, and they do a great job. There are no better builders than we have in New York, and a big percentage of that is Black and minority folks. So I just want to thank everybody in the room for being here. I look forward to some questions, And then I don't know how we're ever going to leave this building today, because if you look outside, it is terrible. But we'll figure a way. There's always a way. And thank you, Jesse, and congratulations.
And with all of that wealth, Trump wants a free ticket to the fair tonight.
All right. Well, I forget who brought that to my attention. Somebody sent me the clip yesterday. Was it you, King Pix? Somebody sent it to me. I can't remember who now. I don't think Gavin Newsom has a guaranteed win. He's actually not that popular nationally with Democrats. So the link is pinned if anybody wants to come up. Everybody, please make sure you hit the like button. If you are new here, and by the way, we're actually up to 290 subscribers. So I've been doing these shorts. I've been trying to do a little short from the night before show daily. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. I kind of depend on StreamYard to clip the show because I'm too lazy to do it myself. So one that I released yesterday has like 1,100 views, which that's like almost 6 times more than the live stream gets on any given day. So I've actually got a few subscriptions from those shorts. So I'm glad I accidentally started releasing shorts. I had no idea they were actually going to be productive. So everybody, please make sure that you share the show out. It's kind of an acquired taste, but the folks who enjoy it, I appreciate that you enjoy it. And unfortunately, what I want to show next is going to be a little bit boring. But here's where I'm going. I've been trying to read where I can, trying to put a little bit of an intellectual gloss on some of my political stances. Because I'm a liberal, but when I say liberal, I probably mean like a capital L liberal or a modern day liberal versus, say, a classical liberal. I've said it before, I'm a creature of the Enlightenment, whether I like it or not. It's just the way I was educated. And, I've been trying to basically go back and reread people like John Locke, Hobbes, some of the people I read in high school and college just to recatch up. I never really got into Hegel. I'm going to have to do that at some point. John Rawls is, someone that I need to catch up with. But essentially, there's a book called Liberalism as a Lifestyle or something like that, which I haven't gotten around to reading. But whatever MAGA is, it's not. Liberalism is almost the opposite. Number one, liberalism is not a populism thing. It's primarily concerned with individual rights, and which basically puts me in opposition to a lot of the people who think that Black people need to be a community like the Asians or the Jews or whatever the poppycock that gets passed around from panel to panel. Yep, I think you should be a team player. But being a team player is not the same thing as necessarily being, it's not necessarily the same thing as being a communitarian. I think community is important when it's important. Otherwise, I think that individual rights, I think they're incredibly important. And what fascism wants to do, and it seems to me what MAGA wants to do, is basically individual rights are superseded by identity politics, basically. The identity politics of being America first supersedes, in a lot of cases, your individual rights. And we see that up in Minneapolis, where, the right to protest, the right to, the First Amendment basically seems to be subordinated to what Donald Trump thinks is the right thing to do. Like, hey, if you want to get rid of these illegal immigrants, some of whom are criminals, you have to give up a little bit of your First Amendment rights. And apparently, there are a lot of people who believe your Second Amendment rights need to be subordinated to Donald Trump's agenda. And there's been some pushback on both First and Second Amendment, advocates. But that's something that, as a liberal, you never rights uber alles. And sometimes it gets real sticky when it's, one person's rights versus another person's rights. But if there is a First Amendment and there is a Second Amendment, you can't, the rhetoric that you shouldn't take a gun to a protest, yeah, you shouldn't, but it's your right to do so if you choose to do so. So Donald Trump is wrong. MAGA is wrong on wanting to neutralize or squelch, or whatever the words you want to use, the First and Second Amendment rights of their political opposition. But if Donald Trump had his way, you would literally, they were talking about firing people, back when Charlie Kirk got killed. There were people who were getting fired from jobs because they didn't praise Charlie Kirk. That is illiberal. So some of you may have heard of Francis Fukuyama. He wrote the end of, what was it? The end of, I can't even, he had a real famous book that I haven't read, but he wrote the end of history. This book he's talking about is Liberalism and Its Discontents, but he wrote one that was like super famous, but then it wound up being wrong. It wound up being wrong on the history in hindsight. The End of History or something like that it was called. But anyway, he is a famous liberal, capital L liberal. And here's what he has to say. I think he's a political scientist.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, look, it's a
Wookiee for another IHS webinar on a recently.
I guess I would be. Wow, is that a toupee? Holy shit! Wow, I've never seen one like that before. So obvious.
Published book. Today we are very, very happy to be joined by Francis Fukuyama, whom I will introduce in just one moment. My name is Bradley Jackson. I'm a senior program officer here at the Institute for Humane Studies at George Mason University. If you're unfamiliar with IHS, we are an educational nonprofit that works with faculty across the country and indeed the world to discuss some of the most important questions facing the contemporary liberal order, questions regarding how to build social trust among members of the liberal community, questions about rising polarization, and questions about things like housing and criminal justice reform and the other policy issues that face contemporary liberal governance. And today, we are very, very pleased to be joined by one of the foremost scholars of these questions, Professor Francis Fukuyama. Francis Fukuyama is the Olivier Nomelini Senior Fellow at Stanford University's Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. He previously taught at the Paul H. Nietzsche School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University, as well as at the George Mason University Schar School of Policy and Government. He is the author of many books, including The End of History and the Last Man, Trust, Political Order and Political Decay, and his newest book, which I have right here, Liberalism and Its Discontents, which is out now. This book is one of Professor Fukuyama's shorter books. It's only about 150 pages, but let me tell you, it is absolutely packed with ideas. And we're going to be discussing some of those ideas today. If you have any questions for Professor Fukuyama, you will be able to ask them by looking toward the bottom of your screen and clicking on the Q&A icon. You'll be able to type your question there, and we'll be getting to as many of those as we can in the last 15 minutes of the program today. So with all of that out of the way, Professor Fukuyama, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thanks very much. It's great to be back in front of the George Mason audience. I had a great time teaching there in the late 1990s, and so I'm happy to join you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm really excited to dig into some of the really interesting ideas in this book and the kind of solutions that you propose for solving or addressing some of the difficulties currently facing liberalism. But let's begin, as your book does, by setting down some of the terms and understanding what we mean when we're talking about liberalism. So the first chapter of your book is titled, What is Classical Liberalism? To help us to understand what the topic of the book is. So could we start there, and could you say a few words about what classical liberalism is and how we should understand this word that has so many different definitions and so many different connotations?
Sure. So a couple of things that I don't mean by liberalism. One is the way it's used in the United States is basically left of center progressive politics, because I think a lot of people in that camp have actually become illiberal in recent years. In Europe, liberalism is usually a center-right pro-market party like the German Free Democrats, and that's not my definition either. I go back to the origins of liberalism in the middle of the 17th century, when liberal writers, reacting to the wars of religion that had taken place in Europe over the previous 150 years, began arguing in favor of a political system that lowered the horizons of politics, not to seek the good life as defined by a religious creed, but simply to protect life itself, a system in which tolerance would be the chief virtue so that people could live peacefully with one another. And that system was institutionally associated with a strong rule of law that put limits on the power of the government. It was associated with constitutional provisions that provided checks and balances on executive power, all in the interest of protecting the rights of individuals. And I think classical liberals also understood that human beings are fundamentally equal in those rights. They don't vary by culture, by nationality. All human beings, have that same set of rights and deserve the same degree of protection of those rights. So that's what I mean by it. I think that, some people use classical liberalism to refer to a more libertarian position that has economic connotations. So that would be a minimal state, minimal regulation, minimal state intervention in the economy. I don't particularly use that understanding of it, because I think that, social democratic Sweden and Denmark, although they tax, at very high rates, are, in my definition, still classically liberal, because they do provide these protections of individual rights, including the right of private property. And therefore, I consider them to be also liberal states in that older sense of the word.
Thank you. So one aspect of the definition of classical liberalism that you offer in this chapter has to do with it being a humane philosophy. And since we're at the Institute for Humane Studies, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the humanity of liberalism and how that's characteristic of the ideology or the set of
Sure.
ideas in your point of view.
Sure. So, there are different justifications for liberalism. So in a way, I kind of outlined the pragmatic one, which is it's a way of governing diverse societies where people differ by religious sect or by, national origin, this sort of thing. But there's also a moral dimension to liberalism, which has to do with human autonomy. In my view, this is deeply embedded in the whole Judeo-Christian tradition. So Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis because they disobey God's command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that represents a really important juncture, because although they make the wrong decision with regard to God's law, they
What's
show
up,
that
tough
they
guy?
actually have the
It
capacity.
just sounds like we some disobedient ass people, man. That's what it sounds like.
Which we are you talking about?
Well, we come from Adam and Eve, right? So I guess we just
From what?
disobedient. We come from Adam and Eve, right?
Right.
So I guess we just some disrespectful ass, disobedient people. That's why I think sin is in us.
Okay. Well, I don't believe in all that.
Well, that's
So
how it sounds. Wait, rewind what he said the last like 30 seconds. That's what it kind
okay.
of sounded like.
Well, could very well be. I mean, there's a religious component, or can be.
Or by religious sect or by, national origin, this sort of thing. But there's also a moral dimension to liberalism, which has to do with human autonomy. In my view, this is deeply embedded in the whole Judeo-Christian tradition. So Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis because they disobey God's command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that represents a really important juncture because
Yeah, it sounds like we hella disrespectful. It sounds like we are people that are just disobedient. That's where we come from. So sin is just gonna be
if you believe that.
Well, that's what he just said. That's what they try to put it out there as.
I mean, okay.
Because
Well,
we're from, what do they call it? We're Isaac, Abraham, Isaac. We're the sons of them.
Right.
Or
well, I don't think.
Eve,
I don't think.
Adam and Eve.
Well, number one, he's not a preacher, so I'm sure he meant that metaphorically. But
I mean, how would you take that though? If you was God and he's what he was saying right there, doesn't that sound like, damn, like, are we that far removed?
I don't take it as literally as you do.
Well, how do you take it?
I take it as a metaphor.
Okay, can you elaborate?
I don't know why I need to elaborate more.
A metaphor.
Let me hear it. Let me hear it again, because I mean, I'm interested that it struck you so hard. To me, it was just kind of a throwaway statement.
Dimension to liberalism, which has to
okay. He's talking about the moral dimension, but the thing is that moral doesn't necessarily have to be Christian. I mean, it can be Buddhist.
It's just your values, what you believe in. That's what religion is.
I know what morality is, but everybody has a different moral system. Now there will be people who probably want to take me to task, but I think ethics and morals are two different things. Moral tends to be more have more of a religious connotation, whereas ethics are more deal more with like everyday, workaday world type rules.
Professionalism.
Right. But the moral dimension he's talking about doesn't have to be Christian. It doesn't have to be Adam and Eve. It could be, Vishnu, it could be whatever your moral code happens to be. Now we're in the West, and liberalism happens to be a Western philosophical tradition. So Adam and Eve is probably more appropriate. But I don't think
in the game,
he doesn't.
What I talk about when I talk about the game, there's morals and ethics in that. People may not even agree with what I'm saying there.
Well, no, I could see your point.
Though even if you're in a game, they have ethics and standards and morals of what that
right.
game
Well,
is,
the ethics would be specific to the game. The morals would be a bigger picture, kind of like a more societal thing. However, there are people who would say that the game is morally dubious.
But I don't think so. I mean, if you do it the right way, There's
Well,
principle.
I mean, I'm not
There's
getting
discipline.
into how
There's.
you do it. I'm just saying there are people out there.
I agree. I know. I know that. I mean, we're hated by everybody. You know, we're hated by everybody. You know, women hate
We,
us.
you mean
Men
as
men
you
hate
mean
us. They're envious. You
you
know.
mean as in black people?
No, no, no. The pimping. The pimping. They hate the pimping. They hate the pimping. Everybody hates the
Okay.
pimping. The pimping is like uh America's
Well, I
most
don't
wanted.
know. I mean,
Like,
I don't know that people actually think of it that much. I mean, I rarely think of pimping or the game or anything like that.
but it's omnipresent. It's ubiquitous.
Ye- yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. It's just not, something that's top of mind, at least for squares like me.
Well, you say that, but if you were trying to get on the dating market right now, you would see that most women have a prostitute mentality.
Really? Well,
Yeah. What do you,
those would not be the women I date.
well, that's kind of like, but if you think about it, the nature of a woman has that element of prostitution in it. You give me something, I'll give you something.
Uh, I don't know.
You don't think
I
that
can
there's not a
honestly,
spirit of prostitution in that?
well, maybe things have changed. I never really whatever if there was, it was so subtle I didn't notice.
Yeah.
Because I mean, most of the women that I've dated, that quid pro quo thing, um, like once once me and my wife, I mean, my wife and I pretty much knew we were going to be a couple. Probably the second time we met, we we were just a couple. It just no one asked anybody. We just were. I never felt like she was asking for anything. And anything that I did, it was because I wanted to do it and I thought it needed to be done. But then there were, there was reciprocal. I mean, a lot of times when we first met, sometimes I'd have to work odd hours. And
Hmm.
I can remember a lot of times because we didn't live, I lived up in the mountains and she lived down in the city. And I can remember plenty of times, I get home at like 3 or 4 in the morning and she would be there and I didn't even know she was gonna be there. And she'd have like a meal ready. It's like, you know, she drove like 70 miles from her place to up into the mountains to my place. And
Hmm.
she knew I was working late. I didn't even know she was going to be there. So I mean, it just kind of happened. We just kind of jived. Now her brother was lived like right up the road from me. So I mean, that's how I met her, through her brother who was my neighbor.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but I mean, I never felt it was quid pro quo. If anything, she probably gave more than I gave her.
Well, that's when a girl actually likes you.
Right.
That's what they
But I
do.
mean,
They
most of
buy
the
you
women,
stuff. They take care of you. They want you to look nice, so they buying that sweater that they think is cute. You know, that's what women do. If they fuck with you, they fuck with you. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody can get in the way with them fucking with you either. That's how women
right.
are. If they really fuck with you, ain't nobody getting in the middle of that.
Now,
You know
I
what I'm saying?
remember back in my 20s when I lived in Norfolk, I was still in the Navy. I did meet a girl who literally told me, now that I think of it, yeah, if you're going to be my man, you're going to buy me things.
Yeah.
And
See, that's the thing. Is
and
that's embedded in women, dog.
well,
Yeah,
but you
that's
know
like
what?
that's
You
prevalent.
know what? I knew, but when she said it, I knew right then and there we would never be anything
Work out.
like, yeah, we
Hmm.
were, we were dating. But and
Right.
that was about where it wound
Yeah.
up. And
Yeah.
I had
That
to
was it.
deploy. That was a wonderful thing. Well, no, we still dated. I didn't say anything to her, but I knew that nah, this will never go any farther than it is now. So,
Yeah.
but
No, I
you'd
hear
be
you.
surprised. I think I never sat down and counted, but I probably maybe 10 women in my life, maybe 11.
Mhm.
My relationships tended to be short in my earlier days, in my younger days. And then as I got older, the relationships tended to be longer, but there would be long gaps in between relationships because I was always either deployed or, even as a civilian, I was always away from home on projects and stuff.
Mhm.
So I mean, I'm sure I know of one for sure. There's probably been another one or two who were that transactional. Most of the
Well,
women
I
I
know you
dated
heard of
really,
the military man thing. Military men be buying pussy, and girls always go after military men because they're stable.
you
I
know
know you.
what? I wasn't
I know
that
you heard of
guy.
that.
I'm sure, but most times a lot of the officers who I served with were married, so there wasn't a whole lot of that.
Yeah. Hey, well, I'm gonna be right back. I gotta make a quick call. I'll be right back, man. Go ahead, play the
Okay.
video. I'll be right back.
With human autonomy. In
Oh, by the way, Kim, I'm touched that you have time to do this. I know you got a flight at some point.
my view, this is
So thank you very much for being here.
deeply embedded in the whole Judeo-Christian tradition. So Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis because they disobey God's command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that represents a really important juncture because although they make the wrong decision with regard to God's law, they show that they actually have the capacity for moral choice. They can distinguish between right and wrong. They may make the wrong choice, but they can actually choose. So they have this fundamental moral autonomy. And I think that in the liberal tradition, it's the protection of that autonomy that is the fundamental thing that makes it humane. So we all differ, in terms of intelligence, skin color, height, gender, I mean, a lot of different things, but what makes us fundamentally human beings is that capacity for choice. And that's what a liberal regime really protects, who we're going to marry, what we're going to do in life, what we believe, what we say, who we associate with. These are all aspects of autonomy that in a liberal society, constitute the core of what it means to be a human being.
So the next move you make in your book, as you're taking us through contemporary discourse, is to distinguish classical liberalism from another word that gets thrown around a lot with a wide set of connotations, which is neoliberalism. So could you describe what you mean by neoliberalism and maybe distinguish it from the other contending definitions or points of view, and say a little bit about what it is you're distinguishing it from and what work it's doing?
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of people on the left use neoliberalism as a synonym for capitalism. That's not my definition of it, because I just think that if you don't have a free market economy that protects private property, you don't have growth, you don't have, economic prosperity. Neoliberalism, as I'm using it, really refers to, the extension of market principles beyond, in my opinion, what they could really bear. In the 1970s and 80s, it was associated with the rise of politicians like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher that basically, in a way, saw the state as the primary enemy, that you needed to privatize and deregulate. A lot of that was
Right, exactly. That's it right there. Privatizing public services. That is he's spot on there. Of course, he's a PhD in it. I'm just some dude on I'm just some dude with an internet show. But he is literally um a like one of a top tier public intellectual.
necessary agenda because, in fact, many Western economies were overregulated at that point. But I think that there was a kind of absolutism about the superiority of markets and the inferiority of states that led to excesses. And so I think what we've seen, especially in Britain and the United States, the two kind of leading neoliberal pioneers was a huge increase in Gini coefficients over this period, increasing inequality. You have a globalized world in which corporations seeking the most minute efficiency advantage move production from one place to another that has a devastating effect on working class communities back in the United States. And then the deregulation agenda, which in many respects was very overdue, gets applied to the financial sector, where in my view it leads directly to the subprime crisis. I mean, not just the subprime crisis, but you didn't have currency crises really up until the early 1990s when this deregulation move started. And then all of a sudden you got a big series of them: the sterling crisis, the Asian financial crisis, Argentina, Russia, and then culminating in the 2008 subprime crisis, which I think was the product of the failure to adequately regulate the financial sector. And that whole sequence of events, I think, had big political consequences because, the subprime crisis took away the homes of millions of Americans, kind of middle-class Americans. The people that designed that system did well. They recovered after a very short period of time. And I think that the populism that we've seen both on the right and the left of those working class people was driven, very heavily by the kinds of inequalities that approach to public policy had, engendered. And it's led to some very interesting results, because now you've got a bunch of conservative thinkers that now actually have broken with free market economics. They don't like free markets because of these effects, and they're saying in principle that the state ought to get back and regulate more strongly and so forth. And so that's the sequence of events, I think, that was set off by this shift to kind of Chicago school economics.
So that puts me in mind of an old economics joke, which I certainly can't take credit for, but it's something like this: that the Keynesians say markets fail, therefore we must rely on governments. The Chicago school says government fails, therefore we must rely on markets. Whereas
I disagree with Fukuyama there. MAGA is nominally populist, but if you pay attention to what Trump has been doing, he's been deregulating like crazy. So this point, there is a faction of MAGA, the common good people, who actually do think that the state should play a bigger role, but I don't know. I don't know that it's that popular. MAGA is not a populist movement. It's basically oligarchical, and I don't know that I agree that MAGA wants to go back to a point where the state plays a bigger role. The state plays a bigger role as far as the culture war goes, but as far as services, shrinking government is literally getting rid of 300,000 federal workers. That's privatizing.
Virginia School at George Mason University of Public Choice said governments and markets fail, but all things equal, you're better relying on markets, in part because they don't have the sort of strong fiat powers of governments. They can't create monopoly out of whole cloth like a government can. So I wonder if you could respond to basically the premise of that joke, which is that even if we might not want full markets sovereignty, we're still it's smarter for us to rely on markets than to rely on the power of government to organize our economic lives.
Yeah, well, so look, I think that really depends on the quality of government. This is something I've thought a lot about. My political order book stemmed from this realization that political scientists didn't really understand the state very well and where it came from. And in a sense, how critical the state was to creating a rule of law and the basic framework for interaction. And the quality of states varies tremendously. So, the typical more libertarian critique of government failure says that governments are subject to capture, to corruption, to politicization. And I think if you look at the experience of different countries around the world, that is frequently true, but it really depends on the quality of the government and the kind of institutional setup. So, for example, all of the fast developers in East Asia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, now China, all have much higher levels of government intervention in markets than the United States or Britain, more classically liberal, classically in the sense of small government liberal states, and yet they achieved among the highest economic growth rates in human history. And it wasn't the question of government or no government. It was the fact that all of these countries had a long tradition of pretty apolitical, highly professionalized bureaucracy. And so in Japan, it was the finance ministry of MITI. I mean, you had economic planning agencies in Korea and all these countries that were relatively shielded from, short-term political pressures. The one example of this that I remember very distinctly is that Japan actually had a large coal industry back in the 1950s. And the government just shut it down because they said, we have no business digging coal. And it led to, I don't know, 500,000 people being laid off and so forth. You don't hear about this because in that society, the government had the kind of authority to do that sort of thing. In Britain, Margaret Thatcher, one of her big battles was with Scargill and the coal miners union. She did the same thing in Britain, but it was much noisier because, Britain is a much more, in a way, much less deferential to authority. But the point is that, in certain countries, you do have high quality, very technocratic government that can intervene in ways that would not be possible in a more, it's not exactly democratic, but in a country that didn't respect that kind of authority to the same extent. And so if you had the equivalent of MITI, the old Japanese Ministry of Industry and Trade in the United States, that was responsible for protecting strategic industries, it probably would have declared the shoe industry in the Carolinas as a strategic industry that needed protection, simply being captured by those interest groups. Whereas, in a lot of Asian countries, you actually could make a decision like that based on, a kind of real, kind of professional anticipation of what the growth path was going to be and which industries needed to be sunsetted, which needed to be supported. So I accept the fact that, in this country, maybe it's a better idea to trust markets than governments, but I don't think that's a kind of universal rule that would apply everywhere.
So the next set of argumentative moves you make in the book takes off from this kind of description of neoliberalism and talks about our understandings of individualism and the self, and locates some of the problems that we're seeing within contemporary liberalism in, let's call it, a misunderstanding of the self. So could you talk a little bit more about that for us, please?
Yeah, so liberals care about individuals. They vest rights in individuals and not in the groups that individuals are members of. And one of the critiques that's made more by people on the left than on the right is that that's wrong, that people are basically social creatures and members of groups, and it's that social orientation that needs to be fostered. My view of this is that, it's not an either or, that people both have individual interests and they respond to individual incentives, but they're also just, social creatures from the get-go. And you could see this during COVID, where, people were prevented from socializing with one another, and they felt miserable about this, because I just think there's these very strong human inclinations to conform to group norms, to socialize, to, behave altruistically towards a certain, circle of people, and to follow the norms that support that. So both the individualistic and the social side are important. I trace this in my political order books, but I actually think that the liberal emphasis on individualism is something that's actually historically contingent, because most societies around the world did not start from an individualistic premise. I mean, most societies were heavily kinship based. Your primary obligation was to your kin group. Over time, it expands from a small, group of close relatives to a tribal society in which everybody traces ancestry to a common ancestor. But individualism really appears in certain parts of Northern and Western Europe, kind of at the end of the Roman Empire. And, in my account, it actually has very specific origins in rules of inheritance that were set by the Catholic Church that restricted the ability of these large kin groups to keep property within this extended family, and made it much more individualistic, and it prevented cousin marriage, remarriage, divorce. All of these things were meant to support the keeping of property within a very narrow circle of family members. And the origins of the nuclear family and of modern individualism, I think, lie in that break that was made more than a millennium ago. And so therefore, individualism is historically contingent, but I do think that it's now become a kind of universal aspiration, because once people are liberated from the tyranny of families, they begin to, it's very hard to go back to that. Anybody that's moved to the big city after living in a small town where you've got a lot of very powerful social norms and your family members are all around you, feels liberated when they go to a city where they can be anonymous and they can do whatever they want, and so forth. And I think that understanding of the importance of individualism has actually taken root in any society that's modernizing. It's also necessary for modern, market-driven economic growth, because if it's kin groups or the state that determine who you're going to buy and sell from, you're not going to end up with any kind of market efficiency. And so you really do need this individualistic premise for markets to work. So this is all a long-winded way of saying that I agree with the historical view that individualism is historically contingent, but I do think that as societies develop and modernize, it becomes more and more rooted in the way that people think about themselves and their lives, and you can't go backwards. We can't go backwards to a kin-based society where everybody's social obligations to their relatives, is a dominant determinant of the way they make decisions in their lives. And therefore, the individualistic premise of modern neoclassical economics applies if you understand that it applies in a sort of very specific sphere of economic transactions, but you can't forget that powerful social aspect of human nature that also makes human beings conform and behave according to group norms and the like.
So it's on this basis that you then go on to talk about some of the criticisms that we see from coming at liberalism from both the left and the right. And you begin with a discussion of the critique of rationality itself, which was primarily developed on the left, but we can also, of course, see it in more right-wing thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche and others. So could you talk a little bit about this critique of rationality and the way in which that in particular undermines liberalism?
Yeah, sure. So the critique of rationality develops, mostly in this line of thought that goes from French structuralism to post-structuralism to postmodernism, and then hence to, the different branches of critical theory. I know this line of thought very well because I actually went to Paris, for a while after college and studied with Derrida and Roland Barthes, and I actually met Michel Foucault when I was an undergraduate at Cornell. But essentially, it begins with a premise of kind of the centrality of subjectivity, that language is not simply a reflection of an objective reality, but it's something that the speaker of the language imposes, a structure that is imposed on reality and that therefore shapes reality. This is broadened into a critique that really comes to a head in Foucault's writing, where he attacks the idea of scientific objectivity. And he does this in a series of critiques of, madness, of homosexuality, of incarceration, where he says that views that ostensibly represent scientific empiricism are actually efforts by existing elites to control other people. And he broadens this into, this concept of biopower, which by the end of his career he sees as pervading virtually, all aspects of thought. So when somebody claims the authority of the scientist, they're not actually speaking with real empirical authority. They're actually representing a kind of hidden interest of elites that want to manipulate people. And it's really a matter of, it's a way of gaining power in the modern world. And this explains a lot of things like political correctness, like why are people in university campuses so concerned with pronouns and different uses of language, or why do some people say that just the expression of a certain derogatory word constitutes violence? I think it really comes out of this tradition that understands language basically as an instrument of power and domination of one group over another. And then, as you've said, it's now drifted over to the extreme right, where during the COVID epidemic, a lot of right-wing people began making exactly Foucault's argument, that the public health authorities are not real scientists; they're simply elites that are using the language of science to manipulate you. What they really want is power over you, and that's the central issue. So we've now got it from both directions. And then I would say that technology has vastly amplified the degree to which this is a problem, because it's kind of undermined the gatekeepers that used to verify and certify information. That's been wiped away, so anyone can say anything they want on the internet, and that's what leads us into the situation of epistemic relativism, where we can't agree not just on moral values, but on basic, factual information. And that obviously is a big problem for any liberal society.
Let's dive into that last point a little bit more. So I'm wondering about the rationality of political systems in general. It seems to me that there's something fundamentally irrational about a fascist system, which is destructive of the moral character of its people and ultimately of the way of life of its people. Hannah Arendt in The Origins of Totalitarianism, and in the Eichmann book in particular, I think makes an argument like this very plain. There are other systems, monarchy comes to mind, which might be perfectly rational, but aren't somehow available to us today as morally legitimate systems. So is liberalism the only rational system, such that it requires a rational point of view in order to work, and any move away from rationalism is necessarily a move away from liberalism, or vice versa? Is every move away from liberalism necessarily a move away from rational political order toward a kind of emotionalized, more irrational way of looking at politics? Do you see liberalism and rationality as going together in the modern world?
No, I think that liberalism and rationality go together. The question is whether democracy and rationality go together, right? So liberalism is closely associated with democracy, but it's not the same thing. Liberalism, refers to the structure of law and constitutional constraints that limit state power, but it's not, popular elections. That's, democratic accountability, which is a parallel set of institutions. And it's in that, so you've had, very rational regimes. Like you look at Singapore right now, which is a good example of perhaps an non-democratic liberal regime. They've got a strong rule of law. They put a lot of technocrats in charge of their public policy, and as a result, they've been very successful economically, and they respect, science and so forth. They don't go for Foucaultian, conspiracy theorizing there, right? And it's not a democratic regime, but it is a liberal one. The problem, I think, that's been very distressing for anybody that believes in liberal democracy, as I do, is that democratic publics are really oftentimes not all that rational. And I think that the phenomenon we've seen is what Jonathan Haidt calls motivated reasoning, where voters do not take in empirical information, process it, make inferences from it, and then choose policies on the basis of that analysis. They start with the conclusions they want, and they use their cognitive powers to gather enough information to justify this pre-existing choice. And you see this kind of over and over again in our politics, where extremely smart people, well-educated people, can take I think ridiculous positions because their motivation for coming up with the conclusion that they started with is so powerful. And so that, I think, is really the problem. It really does come out of democracy more than out of liberalism.
So you also just mentioned technology and the way that technology has made freedom of speech a more difficult proposition to maintain in our world. Could you say a little bit more about technology and the internet and how that's helped to create this crisis of freedom of speech that we've seen over the last 5-6 years?
Yeah, so I think the basic principle of freedom of speech is really fundamental to liberalism, because that, the ability to speak and have opinions is one of the fundamental dimensions of human autonomy. So, it is a basic foundation. The problem, I think, right now that's created by technology is not that it permits all sorts of bad speech, right? Under the First Amendment in the United States, there's no requirement to tell the truth. There's no requirement to not propagate, conspiracy theories, or even hate speech, if it's not violent, is permitted. The problem, I think, is really in the ability of certain institutions to amplify or silence certain, types of speech, especially certain types of political speech. And that's a power that governments traditionally have exercised, which is why, freedom of speech in the United States and American jurisprudence really applies only to the government's restriction of speech rights. But what technology has given us, in social media, is the ability of private actors to amplify or silence on a scale and with a speed that is really unprecedented. Now, traditional media like radio, was also used in this fashion. So the rise of Mussolini and Hitler was tied to the rise of these broadcast media. But the power of social media and the internet platforms right now is vaster than anything that existed previously, because they're global in scale. They can propagate messages instantaneously around the world. They can target messages to particular groups in ways that were not possible under legacy media. And so it's that power to shape speech, either by amplifying or blocking, that is really the problem. And I don't think we've come up with a good solution to doing this, because I think most everybody would agree that apart from certain pretty clear limits, the government should not be given that power to.
Everybody, please make sure you have hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and share it out. Check us out. It's a good little show, but it can be a little dry. Knowledge sometimes is a little bit dry. I find this fascinating, but most people aren't really into politics and the theory behind politics. But I'm going to slog it out because I find it fascinating. And I do a lot of back and forths. I won't call them debates over politics. And this is stuff this is why there aren't too many people who can actually come up and get much beyond Donald Trump good and Biden bad. They don't know. I mean, you've got to know what's under the hood. to, in my opinion, be a responsible auto owner, car owner. If you don't know how the car works, you're not going to be able to get the most out of its performance. And I find folks who just, who are in the MAGA cult, the MAGA blacks, and their white masses, the MAGA masses, they don't know shit about politics. And it's a shame, because if they did, they'd know, they'd understand how problematic Donald Trump and the MAGA movement itself is within the American context. But oh well, it's takes too much work and little bit of fighting sleep to learn shit.
Determine what's acceptable political speech. I do not think that a private technology company whose bottom line is really what's driving it has the legitimacy or the capability to make those decisions. But it's not clear, how you're going to control the flow of this amplified information. And so right now, we're at this point where we've kind of delegated this authority to the platforms, but I don't think that's a long-term solution, and I'm not quite sure what the appropriate solution is.
The next couple chapters in your book, I think, after spending a bit of time with the left-wing critiques of contemporary liberalism, you turn a little bit more to some of the right-wing critiques, but keeping those left-wing critiques present. And one of the questions that you ask there are there alternatives to the liberal order that were somehow missing? What are the things being proposed by the critics of liberalism, and what would life be like were they to prevail? Could you just talk a little bit about those ideas?
Yeah, so there's a number of, a kind of growing number of conservative intellectuals that have tried to come up with alternatives to liberalism. And so, Patrick Deneen wrote a book about why liberalism failed, in which he doesn't just talk about policy failures, he goes after the very essence of liberalism, which is the fact that it doesn't set higher goals for human societies. And he basically wants to go back to a time before the liberal revolution in the 17th century, in which you'd have a broad society-wide consensus on a single definition of the public good, which essentially means going back to something like a state religion, where everybody confesses the same set of beliefs in the final ends of man. Now, this is totally, as far as I'm concerned, just off the scale, impossible. That you're not going to get anything like this in the United States. Previously he had argued for what Rod Dreher called the Benedict option, where at least if you're a conservative religious believer, you could retreat into your local community and maintain those values and norms within that community, which, as far as I'm concerned, is fine. I mean, that's what you do in a liberal society, is you have that right to to that kind of private belief. But increasingly, I think a number of these conservative thinkers, Catholic integralists and so forth, are not content simply to push for that kind of religious freedom, but they actually want to put the power of the state behind a particular religious view. And you tell me, I mean, how likely is that we're going to restore a state religion in the United States? I think not very likely. So I don't think that that's really much of a viable alternative.
The next chapter in your book, after you talk a little bit about these alternatives, is about nationalism. And so we can see on the one hand, I think pretty clearly in our contemporary environment, as you were just alluding to, Christian nationalism that's become quite strong, especially on the right, of course. However, you don't want here to throw nationalism out completely. It seems to me that you're trying to create the conditions for what we might think of as a healthy nationalism, a nationalism that is as inclusive of Americans as possible, not making these religious distinctions, for example. So could you talk a bit about nationalism and how it's a challenge to liberalism that liberalism needs to face somehow?
No, sure. So, on one level, liberalism and nationalism are at odds with one another, because liberals believe that all human beings enjoy rights, and it doesn't matter what jurisdiction they're living in. So we should, support the human rights of people in Myanmar, Bangladesh, or wherever they happen to be living. But nations only enforce rules on their own territory for their own citizens, and they make distinctions between citizens and non-citizens. So how do you reconcile this? And I think that's a kind of interesting thing about liberal theory. I don't think that there's actually a theorist that's laid out a theoretical case for why the world should be divided into nations. I think the case is made on kind of realpolitik, grounds of political realism. One of those just has to do with enforcement power, that you can't really have rights unless they're enforced, and they have to be enforced by a state. With the whole apparatus of a judiciary and police and so forth, and that kind of authority is necessarily limited because right now it exists in nation states and really does not extend beyond the territorial borders of a nation state. I'm not sure we'd actually want to move into a world in which nations could enforce rights in other countries at their will. Sometimes the United States has been blamed for doing this sort of thing, in its kind of muscular pursuit of human rights in other countries. But I think everybody at this point kind of realizes that if everybody did this around the world, we live in a pretty chaotic world. So, so one practical argument is that enforcement power is a scarce commodity. It is necessary if you're going to have meaningful rights, but it has to be territorially limited to the society that has reached this social compact over the legitimacy of state action. So that's one argument. Second argument is really just a observation about human nature, that people show solidarity not to humanity as a whole, but to much smaller groups of people, beginning with friends and family. And it's really the nation that is the largest unit to which there's a kind of instinctive loyalty. And you need this loyalty because people have to obey the commands of the state and believe in its legitimacy even when the state makes mistakes. So you can't have people constantly deciding from day to day, well, I am going to obey the law today, but I don't like what the state did yesterday, so now I'm not going to obey it, right? You need this sort of instinctive belief in the legitimacy of the society that you live in. And that includes liberal societies. Liberalism is supported not because, there are very few people that are willing to die for liberal principles just in the abstract. They die for them as embedded in a particular nation, and in particular their nation. And I think you can see this right now in what's going on in Ukraine, because, there's been this unbelievable outpouring of support for Ukraine. Like 250,000 Ukrainians came back to Ukraine after the Russian invasion to defend their country. And so you say, why are they doing this? Are they interested in Ukraine as a liberal democracy, or are they just interested in the sovereignty of this unit called Ukraine? And I think you can't really separate those questions, because they're actually interested in Ukraine that is a liberal democracy. That's the kind of national identity that they're fighting and dying on behalf of. And so it's really only a liberal idea embedded in a concrete nation that's actually going to produce the social cohesion that you need to, have a viable society. And therefore, I think liberals should not cede the idea of nation to the extreme right, and they have to maintain a proper liberal understanding of what the nation is. It can't be based on fixed characteristics like race or ethnicity or inherited religion. It has to be something that's accessible to the full diversity of the people that are citizens of the country. And therefore, when Prime Minister Modi in India seeks to change the national identity of his country from a liberal one, the liberal one that had been established by Gandhi and Nehru, that was deliberately not defined in religious terms, to one that's based on Hindu nationalism, it means that the 200 million Muslims in India are all of a sudden disenfranchised, and that is the ground for violence, for internal instability, and it's kind of the reason why you need this kind of liberal sense of nation, which India at one point had, but is in the process of losing. So that's why I think nations remain important, but they have to be liberal nations.
What you were just describing, the need for a set of organizing and unifying principles that somehow transcend immutable characteristics like race or inherited ideas, as you say, like religion, leads us to your final chapter of the book, which is called Principles for a Liberal Society. Because it seems to me that what must be left if we leave out immutable characteristics, if we leave out inherited traditional characteristics such as religion and language, what we're left with is ideas and principles. So could you describe a bit what are these principles of liberalism that we need to be aware of and commit ourselves to if we're going to maintain a liberal political order? And also, what are the stakes involved if we fail to do that?
Well, I think that a liberal national identity does have to revolve around ideas, and they need to revolve around the ideas of liberalism and democracy itself. And so, you need to believe in a constitutional order, in the importance and centrality of a rule of law, of democratic accountability, and it's that set of ideas that forms the core of liberal national identity. It's what Habermas called Verfassungspatriotismus, constitutional patriotism. However, that by itself produces a pretty thin sense of community. It doesn't, really have the kind of emotional content that is, I think, necessary for a stronger sense of social cohesion. And, in most liberal societies, it's supplemented by other things that come out of the realm of culture. One of the most important is language. So if you think about what French identity has been, it's been challenged in recent years, but what it's been for much of the period since the French Revolution, it's, the political ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity coming out of the revolution, but it's also the French language and a French cultural tradition that includes, food and, attitudes towards the arts and culture, literary tradition and the like. And I think those can remain fundamentally liberal because anyone can learn to speak French and they can participate in that. So, my favorite example of this is Leopold Senghor, this Senegalese poet who was very important in the negritude.
Yeah, I've read Senghor before.
Who was admitted to the Académie Française because he wrote beautiful, French. And so I think that all liberal societies need a certain thickening of, their identities that remain, fundamentally accessible to everybody, but go beyond just the bare ideas, underlying their constitutional orders. Sometimes it's sports. There's this great movie Invictus about how Nelson Mandela, after the South African transition to democracy, made a big effort to get Black South Africans to root for the Springboks, the national rugby team that at that point was almost all white. There had been a division in the country where the Blacks played soccer and the whites played rugby. And he met a lot of opposition from his fellow Black South Africans who said, why should we root for this racist, sport and so forth. But I think he kind of recognized that, things like sport are exactly these sorts of cultural institutions that thicken people's sense of belonging to the same community and therefore, was an important part of identity formation. So, that's a kind of long answer to the question of, how you build identity in a liberal society.
So I'd like to turn us now to some of the audience questions, and just a reminder to the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and you can type in your question there. I'd like to begin with this question, which is, in Professor Fukuyama's opinion, what is the...
Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop this here. I don't know that we need to listen to a bunch of questions. South Africa is a black authoritarian state. Brian, so what? We have white authoritarian states. We have Asian authoritarian states. What, blacks can't have an authoritarian state? You trying to figure out why you're pointing this out. So I don't know. I'm at 3 hours and 33 minutes. Let's see what else is in here. I don't know that I'm going to go much farther than 4 hours, because looks like everybody has decided to go to the channels with a bunch of mess going on. Let's see. I see Nightish went back over to Chaotic Truth's channel. So no, I don't think they're failing at all. Quite frankly, Brian. No more than Hungary or any of the other authoritarian states. They'll be fine. They got plenty of natural resources. So let's see here. What do we want to do next? Let's see. Bunch of boring stuff here. Why is this stupid thing? You know what? Let's do this. I am interested in what this lady has to say.
Hello, good people. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Make America Think Again with Shauna Vaughn. Welcome to all the...
Now, anytime a good-looking woman has a show called Make America Think Again, I'm on board with that.
New folks who are coming over to the page, watching the videos, please like, share, and subscribe. Everyone, please like this video. Please make sure that you are subscribed, and please comment as well. I do read every single comment. I don't necessarily respond to everyone, but I do read them. And I'm overdue for an episode where I discuss some of the comments. Let me put it that way. Discuss some of the comments and talk about them. I'm overdue for an episode like that. Down below, you see my name there, correct spelling, and then you also have my Instagram information. Please go to my IG page throughout the week if you just need a little quick hit of the news. I post a lot of political information there on my IG page. And then lastly, this week, I'm still supporting defiance.org/reporters. It's a way that you can support as well, making sure that all these independent journalists out here, not me, are supported financially, especially in the times that we are in right now. It is critical that we are able to receive actual factual news. And a lot of independent journalists are doing that work. So they have set up a fund for, the whole situation that went down with Don Lemon and Georgia Fort out of Minneapolis. Don Lemon might be okay, taking care of all his legal representation, but Miss Georgia Fort, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. We don't know. But there are going to be a whole slew, unfortunately, with this regime, we can anticipate a whole slew of other journalists as well that might need help with legal assistance. So this is a place where you can donate in support of that. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about specifically one of the cases that I ran across, because I'm still naming names. I'm still naming names out of the Epstein files. But I wanted to talk about specifically this one because the abuse is noted is horrific, tragic and heartbreaking, but also this young girl names a lot of names in these journal entries that she has that are posted on the DOJ in the Epstein files. So first, let me start off and give you the information so you can find it for yourself. Again, always do your own due diligence, always do your own research. So I'm going to give you the information so you can go look it up to back up everything that I'm saying, okay? So EFTA AO 2731465 is where I believe it begins. And the entries end with this young lady, I believe, on 7-2. So EFTA 2731465 is where you can begin. And then there's several entries, and I believe it ends with the last entry ending in 7-2. Okay, so there have been postings of her journal entries. There are some of her writings she kind of wrote in code, so you have to kind of read, do a vertical then diagonal thing, but some of them have been deciphered by the FBI, DOJ, whomever, probably FBI, who investigated her specific case. So you do have some of the writings there that you can just read, and you don't have to decipher what she was trying to say. But also she included like magazine clippings and different things to represent some of the words and some of the things that she wanted to talk about. So first, let me start off with telling you just how vulnerable this young girl was. I believe it says that she was only 16 years of age where these journal entries began. I don't know how long she had been with Epstein, but it is clear that she refers to herself as a human incubator. So it is clear that this young girl was forced, was raped and forced impregnations. Let me put it that way. We don't know if these babies survived or if these were like early. I'm trying to be careful because I don't want this to get pulled down, but we don't know if these were early means that they were performing these procedures to get rid of the pregnancies, or if they were inducing and forcing early births. So these young girls would not be showing. It's not clear. And then at the end of the day, where are all these babies? She clearly, from these journal entries, she was impregnated several times, multiple times, and back to back. If these babies survived, where are these babies? And also, if they got rid of these babies, these infants, where are they as well? Are they buried on these ranches and on these golf courses? Is there some sort of investigation that can be open to find the bones or the whatever might be left of these babies? Because you can still track the DNA. She was impregnated by the men that she lists in this journal entries. So let me get on with it. So she's underage, first of all. She also is said to have been living with or she was on the autism spectrum, but she also had Down syndrome as well. She speaks to presenting like, or having been told that she was like a beautiful porcelain doll. There are no images, of course, and they should be redacted, of the victims. So, but this is how she describes, or talks about what she was told about herself. So let me put up this journal entry for you, and I'm going to read this. Read the things that she said here in the journal entry, and then we're going to talk about some of these names that are listed here. Okay, so at the start of the journal entry, so she talks about how she turned 17 on, and that date is redacted, okay? So she was 16. She had to have been 16 when she was pregnant, where she's talking here. So first entry, to send you away and take away your life. Ticking time with shortened schedules and waiving all my absent days to fit the scheduling of vile men. I'm thinking that she's talking or speaking of school absences here. Was worth it? No, don't answer that. I know I never have been. This is a journal entry. And then it goes on. I will never be able to forgive myself for not being able to tell you what Miss Vicky does and what really happens in Florida and California. I hope you don't ever have to meet Fat Pig Weinstein or the rest. That's Harvey Weinstein that she's referring to. And Miss Vicky, we don't know who Miss Vicky is, but we need somebody to find out who Miss Vicky is. Where's the investigation, FBI, into Miss Vicky? What was Miss Vicky doing to these young girls? And happens in Florida and California. Like I said in a previous video, I'm calling on governors of these states, when we know Florida, the Satan's not going to do anything, but Gavin Newsom, be the first brave governor to do something about this and open an investigation into these allegations about babies and children being buried on golf courses, specifically Rancho Palos Verdes, the golf course of the felon. I'm calling on you, Gavin Newsom, to be the first courageous governor to do so, to open an investigation. Okay, so moving on. Hold on, going too far down. Okay, so the next entry, it doesn't matter how far away you are. And again, I'm assuming she's writing these journal entries to the babies that are missing. It doesn't matter how far you are, no matter how good you think they are, even the old president, they will get you. So she's talking about herself now. So it doesn't matter how far away you are, no matter how good you think they are, even the old president, they will get you. He should have been thinking of Chelsea. Gross. Chelsea Clinton. In a plane, on a yacht, in New York, in DC, at the Vineyard, on the island, in Palm Beach. It doesn't matter. Disgusting pigs like Alan Dershowitz, can't ever pronounce his name. Alan Dershowitz, Mr. Carruthers, I have not figured out who that person is yet. And even
she disappoints me.
I have my ideas, but don't specifically know who this person is, will hurt you, especially if Ghislaine is busy or not with you. So somehow, some of these, and reading some of these emails and these entries, I'm figuring out that sometimes Ghislaine must have played a good cop, bad cop situation. Like, she was one of the torturers. She was engaging in these sexual acts. She was one of the perpetrators of these sexual offenses as well. But also, for some of the girls, in some instances, she played the role as protector. And some of them even spoke of seeing her as a mother figure. More madam than mother, but again, these are young girls and they don't even realize what's truly happening to them. I feel broken and exhausted. I'm so fucking tired of this sick and twisted game that is causing so much physical and emotional pain. This is another entry. Oh, shoot. Let me back up here. Those pigs who call themselves smart and talk about Harvard act worse than animals. They make They make a bad name for animals, just fucking sick. Mr. Sauerkraut Kraus, I haven't found out who this person is yet. Martin Minsky has been publicly acknowledged so far for his doings. He received some consequences, but not enough. Gross, but I felt sorry for Mr. Novak. Keep in mind, these are all men that she has been subjected to rape by these men. He was as uncomfortable as me, speaking of whoever this Mr. Novak is, but Mr. Novak still did it. Ivy League schools don't equal smart or good. It seems more like trash, yucky, but they can't behave. The disgusting Mr. Staley, if anyone ever calls me Tinkerbell again, I will lose my mind. He left bloody marks on my arms from his belt and thought he had the right to call me that when he has ears as big as Dumbo. So here, there sounds like some torture being used here. I should have called him that in return. You've been a very, very, and then apparently there's a clipping from a magazine that reads naughty girl there. And maybe that's what he was saying to her as he beat her or did whatever he did to her. I'm thinking I'm going to break. Why would they allow Mr. Leonesis wait this long? Why would he bring a friend and make a video? I'm so broken, and the procedure was painful and blood all over the sheets. I can't play this game anymore. I have to ask Galeen for help. If anyone can make it stop, it would be her. So she was so scared because I got sick and I was burning up with a fever. So I don't know if this was a forced early birth or them getting rid of the baby. And again, it sounds like she's saying that Mr. Leonesis, I found out his first name is Ted, waited a longer period of time. So it sounds like what she's saying is this is a harsher experience on her body because they prolonged the wait out of the normal whatever window of time that they were previously done these things to her. Oh, she was so scared. Okay, so she put me in a freezing cold shower, not taking her to a doctor, not rushing her to an emergency room, of course, putting her in a cold shower, not really caring whether or not this young girl dies because they're not getting her the proper medical attention. I can't do this. Mr. Rails and Mr. Ian, and again, we don't know if she's got the correct spelling of these names. I have not been able to find these two individuals. And there's a clipping, I guess, from a newspaper or magazine with blood on hands. Mr. Rails and Mr. Ian, they could be doctors, or they could have been the men involved. But so does Jeffrey and Mr. Jacobson and Mr. Conway. I did find a Mr. Conway, a John Conway, is in other emails with Epstein.
However, instead of like actually just talking free form about it, she's actually reading from one of the PDFs. And I don't know, it's kind of boring. I'm just kind of biding time till 4 hours. I assume that this is going to be one of those shows that's short because what I want to talk about is boring, but it can wait till tomorrow. And I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about. And mainly, she just dropped this, I think it was yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. So I always listen to a channel called Make America Think Again. I'm always gonna be a sucker for that sort of thing. There is plenty of mess going on. I see Big J is doing what Big J does, which is just like fucking, sometimes it's just too messy to to participate in, but for those who like that sort of thing, he stopped by Sharon's show and said something very briefly. And I see Brownsville is over there on Big J's channel, so who knows what's going on there. Nightish was up here, but then he dropped off and went back to CT's channel. There's always something messy going on CT's channel. And someone else is live. I can't think. Bomb Cherry. Now she's always good for some messy stuff. So you have 3 messy options, and I don't have any mess to present. So the numbers are dwindling. But so we go. I'm just not in a. I don't really. I try and avoid that sort of stuff. So that is why we will never have big numbers here. Though I did get a short today that hit 1,000 views in a day. It did it in like 8 hours. So and it was about Lindsey Graham. I made it basically called Lindsey Graham a court jester, and that seems to have gotten some traction. So I guess if it's political, I guess I'm going to have to do more political, specifically politics, roasting sort of shorts to get views. Believe it or not, I've actually gotten maybe 4 subscribers just from the shorts. So maybe I found another avenue of growth for the channel. But in the meantime, I will be back somewhere between 2 and 3 tomorrow. I'm going to continue on this liberalism track, probably contrasting it with some MAGA stuff. Unless something interesting happens or I get a better idea. Who knows? I may get a better idea. And in the meantime, make sure that you support the show by supporting the host. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and that's definitely opening day for the Sovereign Beer Fund for the weekend. No idea if I do a weekend show or even what that weekend show would be, but more than likely I'll do a Saturday show. Sunday I'm not so sure about. So go forth, choose your mess. Who knows? I may actually listen to Bomb Cherry for a little bit because it sounds like she has the more interesting mess. But I will see everyone tomorrow.